So I think we have a quorum, if I'm doing the math right. So we might as well go ahead and get started. I will call the meeting to order. It's 8:30. This is the State Board of Education, Wednesday, February 15th. And let's, I guess, Maureen, if you can do the roll call, please.
Sure. Patrick Brown.
Present.
Kimberly Gleason. Tammy Colby. Oops, Kim's there. She's not unmuted yet.
Yeah.
My tester sound, Kim. Right, Kim Gleason. Tammy Colby.
I just got a text from her saying that she's going to be just a couple of minutes late.
Okay. Thank you. Richard Werner.
Here.
Gabrielle Lucci.
Here.
Tom Lovett.
Here.
Lyle Jepson.
Here.
Mara Severson.
Here.
Jenna O'Farrell.
Here.
Dan French.
Here.
Did you call me?
I didn't, but Jennifer Samuelson.
Here.
I have you on my list. I'm like, well, she called the roll call, but yeah, thank you.
And I think that you guys got my here when I waved.
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Glad I can be heard. Thanks.
All right. So next on the list is our amendments to the agenda, and I have one amendment. I'd like to postpone agenda item C, which is our recognition of Patrick Brown. So Patrick's term expires at the end of the month, but he has graciously agreed to stay on until his successor has been named and appointed. So we are not going to honor him today, which is actually good news. And we're very grateful for Patrick's willingness to stay on, and we will recognize him at a subsequent meeting once we have everything all buttoned up. Are there other amendments to the agenda? All right, hearing none, I will move to the next item, which is public to be heard. If there are any members of the public who wish to be heard, please raise your hand, or if you are calling in, I believe it's *5 to unmute. Is that correct, Maureen?
*5 to raise your hand, *6 to unmute.
Okay, thank you.
There was one hand up. It was the 4800 number.
Okay, so the caller who has your hand raised, you can, you may speak. And if you are speaking, we can't hear you. So I think you need to press *6 if you wish to be heard. I'm seeing a phone number ending in 6687.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. This is Amy Hornblass, and I have another person here, Allison Despathy, on the phone. So there'll be two of us speaking.
Okay.
Okay, and this is Amy Hornblass.
Before
Yes.
you start, let me just see if there are other members of the public who wish to be heard.
Sure.
If there's anyone else, if you could raise your hand just so that we know how many people we have waiting to speak. So I'm not seeing anyone else. I may interrupt you, Ms. Hornblass, if anyone else comes into the meeting and wishes to be heard. But for now, the floor is yours.
Yes, good morning. I have in my hands here a letter that Secretary French sent out to schools, to dear superintendents and independent school heads. I believe it was last March, but it doesn't have a date on it. But the last point that Secretary French made in this letter is schools may need to implement masking or other mitigation measures as a reasonable accommodation for students who are medically vulnerable. So I believe here Secretary French is making the decision that mask wearing is sound, which is by statute. He is the final decider on that point. And I really, at this point, having learned that the Agency of Education has absolutely no evidence that masks are safe, and knowing that you have received several complaints from parents and families and staff members, you have, superintendents have, difficulty breathing, serious health concerns, we really need to hear a response from you at this point. Where in statute does it say that you are allowed to ignore this? Where in statute does it say that when you hear these complaints, you don't have to address them, that you don't have to present any evidence of safety? I really need to hear based on what criteria and with what checks and balances have you made this recommendation that schools may need to implement masking. It seems like the board may need to look at expanding the definition of the parties who are involved in special education disputes. If entire classes of students can be affected by these special education team decisions, then we need to expand who is affected and who gets to be part of that decision. And also forming an advisory commission is definitely, according to statute, the Agency of Education's purview. So I'm not sure what, I really need an answer from you. What are you doing about this? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and hi, Allison Despassi. I'm here when I'm allowed to talk. If now is the time, just let me know.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So this is Allison Despassi. I spoke with you last month. I'm from Danville, Vermont, and I just wanted to update you. I continue to receive phone calls from people in the community who are really concerned and feel helpless. They're not quite sure what to do right now. They're being ignored by the board. The superintendent is not reaching out to them. They cannot have a conversation with the principal. At this point, there were 16 children who left the school last year. We do not know specifically why, but we know that definitely some of them left specifically because of the masking issue that's going on at the school. And what we're saying right now is I fully respect and empathize with the fact that this is a fairly new situation that you guys are contending with. And what we're asking is for you guys, because it is in your power, to just please step in and take some action and monitor and do what needs to be done at the school. The parents are struggling, many children are struggling, many teachers are struggling, and they need some real guidance on this. It's not a situation that's really come up before, and the fact that Amy keeps bringing up, we do not have the safety data to warrant and justify this action. And that's really at the heart of the matter. That's really the struggle. That's where we really need you guys, even if you can jump in and say, okay, what is going on here? Why are these students leaving? Let's see what's going on. Let's try to create an opportunity for a conversation between the board, the superintendent, and the community. They obviously need some guidance, and I don't know what it's going to take, how many students have to leave, how much the school has to sort of implode for some action to be taken. And so this is where we're trying to see, is there a way to please consider being proactive and take your leadership role and your oversight role to really sort of dive in and see what's happening and what must be done. And there have been offerings of someone who is trained to be able to help accommodate a situation where other children are not put at risk. Because right now, many families are feeling that their children's educational opportunity is compromised, and their health is being compromised, and their social, emotional well-being is being compromised. So we're just simply really requesting if you can please jump in, assess the situation, see what can be done so that all parties involved, both any child that needs accommodations as well as the other children in the school, can be properly supported moving forward. This is the request that we have, and thank you so much for your time. I know it's a difficult situation, but we are asking for you to step in and take action and try to help figure out what's going on in Newark. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Are there other members of the public who wish to be heard? All right, well, we will leave this agenda item open for a few minutes. We'll circle back to it in a little bit. But in the meantime, why don't we move ahead to agenda item D, which is to review and approve the January 18th and January 25th, 2023 meeting minutes. And actually, let me just take them one at a time because I think that'll be easier. So let's do January 18th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All right, I think I saw Kim first, so moved by Kim and seconded by Tom. Any discussion? Kim?
I would just like to have the document that was our previous roles and responsibilities report from last year. I think Tammy sent it around after that agenda item. I just would like it attached in a link in these minutes, please. So with that friendly amendment, or however we go about doing it,
Sure,
that
I
can
think that's a
happen.
great idea. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, with the friendly amendment to attach a link to include the roles and responsibilities document to the January 18th, 2023 minutes. All those in favor, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, please raise your hand and signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? All right, the motion has passed. Thank you. And then moving on, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our January 25th, 2023. This was a special meeting that we had with the Agency of Education to discuss the district quality standards and quality assurance rules. Is there a motion?
I'd move that.
Moved by Lyle. Is there a second? Seconded by Kim. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes of our January 25th, 2023 meeting, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, please raise your hand and signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries, and thank you. Let me just circle back quickly on public comment. Okay, continue to keep that open. So for board announcements, I've got a couple. One, I've received notification from Gabrielle that she needs to leave a little bit early today, around 12:30. So just so everyone else is aware of that. And then the other thing is I've been invited to testify before both the House and the Senate Education Committees a couple of times. I have asked Maureen to include links to the presentations that I prepared in the minutes, so you'll have access to that. But basically, in a nutshell, this is a pretty new General Assembly with, I think, a third of the legislators are new this session. So it's been a lot of helping them understand what the state board does, how we came to be, what we do, who we are. So I gave one presentation each to House Ed and Senate Ed, sort of with an overview of the board and what our statutory authority is, and then went into a little bit of depth on rulemaking. I had a follow-up presentation before House Ed that was really focused on the updates to the 2200 rule series that were implemented last year. Some of those rules have already gone into effect. Some of those rules will go into effect this July, and just kind of giving an overview on that. Emily Simmons joined me to talk about the special education aspects of the rules. And I should mention that Tammy also joined me briefly on sort of the general introduction to the state board, just to talk about roles and responsibilities and where we are with that. And then the second time that I testified before Senate Ed was really talking about the support that we receive from various members of the Agency of Education. And I had reached out to Maureen, Suzanne, Emily, Donna Russo-Savage, and our Assistant Attorney General, just to sort of get an estimate of how much time they were each spending on board-related activities. So I sort of crunched that data and sent that information off. So you'll have all of that linked to the minutes. So with that, are there other board announcements? Jenna?
I need to hop off at 11 to step away for a meeting. I'll be back.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'd forgotten about that, but thank you for reminding me. Any other board announcements? All right. Let me just circle back another time for public comment. All right, well then, let me turn it to Gabrielle and Amara for the student report.
Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. I don't know. I mean, I definitely noticed that, you know, we're almost to March, which is a scary thing. The year's gone by very quickly, and I've noticed a lot of excitement and stress among our students, especially among the seniors. My class, we're waiting for acceptance letters from colleges, and we're applying for scholarships, and there's just a whole lot that we're doing, and it's stressful, but it's also something really exciting for us because we're getting that much closer to the next chapter in our lives. I've noticed that there seems to be an increase in behavioral issues, not just in my community, but in communities around mine, and it's a little concerning to see. It's mainly been an increase in harassment, and a lot of times it is male on female harassment, and that is a very concerning thing to see in my community. And I just hope that there is some kind of solution brought about soon to help these students so they can feel safe while going to school. Other than that, I don't really think I have anything else to report, but thank you.
Gabrielle, the behavioral episodes that you're seeing, is this in school or school-related activities, or, you know, in the community?
This is usually in school during the school day.
Kim? And then Patrick.
Yeah, thank you. Thinking about that question, Gabrielle, is it evident the process and procedures that students have in terms of resources in these matters? I know every school is required to have a hazing, harassment, and bullying policy. That requirement may or may not be clear to students what their path for support and resolution may be. From your perspective, do you know if that's clear what the resources are?
It really depends on the student. I know that a lot of 9th grade students who are still relatively new to the high school experience are not as aware of steps they can take when things go wrong for them. A lot of it is fear, but a lot of it is a lack of knowledge. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Gabrielle, I have a question. Is the administration aware of this, and are they making any effort to address this? And the other part, is there space in classes to talk about this, to have folks come in and talk about bullying and harassment to students?
I know for my community specifically, it's not very talked about. A lot of times people are unaware of certain things that are happening because of people being afraid to speak up, because they don't know exactly what to do in the situation. But a lot of times when these things do happen, it can be a little bit brushed under the rug because it's a little bit of a scary thing to talk about. And I feel like people can be afraid to address that topic, but I think it's important to help prevent these situations from continuing.
Thank you.
Lyle.
Gabriella, when there's an issue and the student body generally knows more about the issue than most people, but does the administration or teachers, does the administration let the students know or the teachers know what happened just to quell rumors, or is there any conversation at all when there's, say, a serious situation that you were aware of, but does the administration go silent? What happens?
It really depends on the instance. And it depends on how much of the student body knows about the situation. If it's only a small portion, then it may not be publicly like broadcasted and made aware to other people, but if a larger proportion of the students know about it, then there may be something put out to quell any potential rumors.
And one final, or for me, follow-up question. Have you thought about like what could be done to really improve the situation at your school? In terms of whether that's more oversight by faculty and staff, or whether it's students speaking out, speaking up. Just curious if you have any thoughts.
I've definitely tried to give some thought to it, and I think that part of it starts with fellow students making sure that they know, felt like students making sure that they can support victims of bullying or harassment, making sure that they know that they're supported in that, so they may feel more compelled to come forward. They may feel a bit safer, more secure in doing that because they know that they have the support of others on their side.
Well, thank you for that. Oh, Lyle.
And no pressure, and you can pass on this question if you want to, but if you were the administration, what would you do differently? Is there anything you would say, I think we should do this? And you can pass on that question if you want to.
I don't know if I can answer that question in full right now on the spot, but I don't know. I think I'd have to think about that. I'd want to give a thoughtful response for that.
Great, thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions or comments for Gabrielle?
Well, on a positive side, Gabrielle, do you have any like personal information that you can pass on about exciting news for you? Like, what are you doing next year?
I will be attending the University of Central Florida as a psychology major. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's exciting.
It's a really exciting time. And Florida, coming from a Vermont winter doesn't sound like a bad idea.
No, it doesn't. I'm really looking forward to the weather.
Awesome. Congratulations.
And how far away is that from like Disneyland?
UCF is actually 45 minutes away from Walt Disney World, so that is very exciting for me, a very big Disney fan.
All right, so Amara, let me turn it over to you.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right, so for my student report, I have a couple things. So one, like Gabrielle said, everybody's starting to get all of their college acceptance letters and applying for scholarships. For my tech center, we just got back our NTHS acceptance letters, which are pretty excited. So National Technical Honor Society, which gives you opportunities to apply for scholarships and gives you something great to put on your resume as well. So we're all pretty excited about that. So in my CTE, my technical center, we have been having issues with a lot of parking at our school, which resulted into students getting ticketed and towed. And to me, in my opinion, I personally don't think it's right to ticket students because a lot of us come here on scholarship and a lot of us don't have jobs in high school. Some of us can't get jobs because we have jobs at home, or you never know somebody's situation at home. And overall, it's just a lot of people are also paying to be here. Like adult students have to pay at least $7,000 for their tech center in scholarship, not in scholarship, in tuition. So it's a very odd way to kind of get people to stop parking in certain places, which I understand. I just don't think we need to take it so far to the point where we have to ticket students. I feel like, that should never really be an option, especially because it's $25 if you get ticketed. So it's a good amount of money. It's not like it's like $5, like, oh, here, it's like $25, $30 that they're thinking about implementing, and they've started implementing it since last week. So it's pretty hard. Another thing that's going on is we just had program switch today in my CTE, which means that a bunch of different programs, so like we collaborate with different career programs, so like automotive technology, culinary and baking arts, digital media arts 1 and 2. We get to collaborate with all the different programs we have here and get to be in their program for a day, which gave us a bunch of different opportunities of what we wanted to do either next year if you are still a junior, or if you wanted to come back in as an adult student to see what other career choices you want to try and go for. So it's just a pretty fun experience to get to see what other programs get to do, and just get a glimpse of what they do in their everyday kind of spiel, you know. But other than that, there's not really much I have for a student report. We did have in Montpelier, we did have a bomb threat in Montpelier just a couple days ago. We had a bomb threat that was affecting a bunch of different schools around it as well. It was a hoax bomb threat, thankfully, but they've been hitting a bunch of different schools around Vermont, which scared us pretty quickly, so we had to take precautions during that day and make sure we were all safe and practice our Atlas drills. Along with, we had another incident at school where we had to keep a clear the halls drill, which caused us to stay in our classrooms and have our rooms be locked. So that was also pretty tough. So I want to say we have a lot of violence in our community going on right now. I don't know how I would resolve the issues. You know, with those kind of situations, I feel like there's never really a right answer, because everybody does it their own special way. But that's pretty much just what I have for my student reports. Yeah.
Right, well, thank you. You've got a lot in there. So were you a scholarship the first thing that you mentioned about people being named, were you one of the named recipients?
Oh, for NTHS?
Yes.
Yes, I was. Yes.
So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
And when you got to visit the other programs, did you spend the day doing anything different?
Well, I didn't get to really do it because I had to stay in my program and help, so it was an activity created by student leadership, which I'm in at my school. I'm in the student leadership program. So student leaders had to stay in their program to help with the activities. So I didn't get to do it, but based on the feedback we got and on the surveys we did, people really seemed to like program switch day. And we definitely want to continue doing it in the future.
That's great. Any questions, comments for Mara? Lyle?
Just for clarity, thanks for your report. In the beginning, you talked about paying tuition. I'm assuming your school pays your tuition. You're sending school to the tech center, not you personally. Is that correct?
So how it works is if you are still in high school, your sending school does pay for your tuition. But if you come as an adult student, which means like if you already graduated and you want to come to CVCC as an adult student, which you've already graduated, you do have to pay out-of-pocket tuition each month to complete the full year to be here. I know in like my cosmetology program, we had a lot of girls come in and start their first year as a senior, and then they graduate, and then they come back their second year as an adult student. So in their second year, they have to pay tuition.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you're in your second year with the program, correct? Amira?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm in my second year and I'm a senior. So
great. And do you know what you're doing next year?
Yep. So I'm actually going to be moving down to Georgia for school, and me and Gabrielle will be next to each other, and I'm going to be going down to Georgia to study barbering, and hopefully start my own business in entrepreneuring and finance. Pretty excited.
Really exciting. Why did you pick Georgia?
I picked Georgia because I really wanted to be down south. I really don't like winter. Winter is not my favorite. And I also wanted to change the scenery. So I feel like that would have been a perfect option. And I visited Georgia last year for a cosmetology competition. And I just fell in love with it when I went down there. So I think it'd be awesome to try that.
Great. Any other comments or questions for Mara? All right. Well, thank you both. This was a great report from each of you, and I really appreciate it. You both have really exciting things going on. So with that, I'm going to just circle back one last time. Now we're a little bit over time, but if there are any other members of the public who wish to be heard. Okay, hearing none. I think this takes us to item G, which is the update from the Special Education Advisory Council. If Katie Ballard is with us.
I am.
Great.
Good morning. Before I get started, I do just want to say, maybe I should have said this in public comment, my apologies. That last student report where there was conversation about ticketing and towing students parking, I just, as somebody who has struggled financially, the idea that my child could put all of that effort into getting to school after going to work in the morning, and due to the logistics of a parking pass, our family could end up without a car. I think of situations like that. I would just encourage anybody on the call who has a voice in that conversation or could have a voice in that conversation to remember the equity and the reason we all go to school. So I will get off my soapbox now and continue with that, but that just really stuck out to me as something that was concerning to hear.
Thank you.
Since the last time we spoke, interestingly enough, when I came here last time, I learned about the EQS revision or update work that was being done, which then promptly launched a very big conversation with the Special Education Advisory Panel about a couple of things. One being, is this something that we feel we want to have a voice into or that would be appropriate? And two, where was our voice before came up a little bit for us in terms of realizing that maybe we haven't done a great job in recent years engaging and connecting with other groups that are overseeing rules or having conversations about students with disabilities as well. And so it really did prompt a discussion where we've started to connect more and look at where we can collaborate with other groups, boards, and committees doing work. We spent some time getting to know the Act One work group, as well as a few others. So that prompted some really positive collaborative connections. I would say it also prompted a number of comments, and I just have to say the EQS subcommittee group, amazing and so patient and tolerant with all of our feedback. We really appreciated that. It is felt from our panel like that process, even though maybe we weren't aware of it in the beginning, couple of months, being able to intentionally have a voice and have our feedback considered and questions asked in a proactive, intentional way felt really good. So we wanted to thank the subcommittee group as well as this group, your board, for being willing and patient to give that process the time it deserves. So thank you for including us in that part. I think part of that conversation, and Kim or Tammy, if I get the wording wrong, please feel free to correct me. But a lot of the conversation that came up for our panel related to the EQS conversation actually seemed like it maybe sort of fell into the assurance or compliance part of the conversation. I believe I got the term right, but we talked a lot about some of the things that are in the EQS, which may already have been in it or may have already been considered for changes, related to a few areas, specifically the flexible pathways and the PLPs, and also the graduation proficiency requirements. There's a lot of conversation about those different aspects and those different pieces having a role for all students in schools already. And it was very clear to our panel as we moved through these conversations that not everybody is feeling that way. In fact, we heard from multiple parents who still was under the impression that their student was going to get a certificate of attendance versus a diploma and didn't quite understand some of that. There was a lot of concern shared about the fact that maybe while we say we have the same standard for graduation proficiencies, there is a little bit of an ability to give students in special education the modifications that eliminate some of that proficiency expectation. So when a student gets credit for, say, they're in an alternative program and they might get credit towards their diploma for walking into a building, or dialing a phone might be credit in the math. So there's just some concern around wanting to make sure that the standards around proficiency for all students across Vermont are held to that higher standard, and that if there is conversations that need to happen around how to modify and meet proficiency in a way that falls in line with planning and special ed programming, we as a panel would absolutely love to be a part of that conversation. I think we've also spent a lot of time in the last few months hearing from the public and having discussions as a panel related to the role and the use of independent schools. So from the process of which a school gets approved to be a special education independent placement in Vermont, or the process of which students who are publicly placed in approved independent schools, the oversight of their educational experience. We heard a lot as a panel that there are students who are publicly placed in private or independent schools that are approved and are funded. As I said, publicly, sorry. It's a little early, my brain's still catching up. Those students are not getting specialized instruction. One example, and I believe I shared one example similar, was going to an IEP meeting and actually hearing, they didn't even know what specialized instruction was. They considered, some of the different services they were reporting to the school that they were providing weren't even being provided. That was just kind of their general classroom. So just a lot of concern was raised to the panel as we engaged in this conversation. And so I think our panel would just plan to continue identifying and talking about this area of potential unmet need in the coming months, with potential to make recommendations to the state board and the AOE. But this is an area that we would encourage your board to just be very thoughtful of, related to the students in special education as well. We have also identified a few other areas which we will likely have some feedback for before the end of the year. And not to go into any rabbit holes, but just to kind of give you a general idea. Those are related to attendance at IEP meetings, specifically the ability to have an administrator or building principal attending meetings. Talked about IEP content, the concern that goals are being repeated over multiple years and teams aren't changing services. COVID protocols, this was something that we had public comment, and our executive committee did vote to support both to the state board and to Secretary French related to COVID protocols for students with significant health concerns or disabilities that make it hard for them to attend school now that masks and other mitigating safety precautions have been taken away. Primarily informing students when they've had exposure, I think was a big one that we talked about. We continue to talk about the critical staff shortage and the impact that it has on students with disabilities, from having shortened school days where parents are being told there's no staff to work with your student after this time, you need to pick them up. We have families who are being told their students just can't go to school that day because they don't have the staff to support that student, both of which are very concerning on the far end of the spectrum. But we also have a number of students who aren't able to access their general ed classroom due to lack of paras or other supports, as well as students who are struggling emotionally and behaviorally because there aren't enough mental health staff to meet the level of need in the buildings. The last two areas that we really have focused on and will continue to focus on is the rule change specific to literacy and the adverse effect rule. We've had multiple public comments and have multiple panel members who are very passionate about this and continue to have concerns about the rollout in the general education training specific to the RTI model for identification. And lastly, the exclusionary discipline practices, which has been an area of unmet need and concern for our panel for about 2 years now. Our hope is in the next couple of months, as we get closer to our summer break, that we will have some really intentional conversations with multiple stakeholder groups about how we can come together to talk about the issues that maybe aren't always easy to talk about. So not everything falls into the process and the data points that we currently collect under Rule 4500. A lot of parents are feeling like their students are experiencing exclusionary discipline or being put in the time away zone for multiple hours daily, which don't technically meet the requirement for reporting, but adds up to an experience of trauma and a lack of instructional time. Which we've heard repeatedly over the last few months as a growing concern coming out of the pandemic. That's a lot of information, and I think that covers kind of where we've been, where we're heading in the next couple of months. And again, I just want to say from our panel as a whole, we've really appreciated the opportunity to engage with the state board, kind of this regular opportunity to communicate, as well as to be included in the EQS subcommittee process. So thank you for that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And you did sort of jam a lot into a short period of time. Comments, questions from the board? Kim?
Yeah, thank you so much, Katie, for your thoughtful sharing of the concerns in the areas of where it's felt supported to bring voice to these concerns. I'm wondering if your group has support to know where the area of concern is one requiring either legislative action, or if it falls within a rules purview, or how to affect the change. I know sometimes figuring out the web of authority can be challenging, and I didn't know if that's something you all have given consideration to. I don't know that it's intuitive, I should say.
We are very fortunate to have several members, myself included, who are pretty engaged on a lot of levels of the policy conversation. We also have Rachel Seelig, who is our past vice chair or past chair, who's been really supportive in that. I would say in the past, we have had a lot, and this is in no way meant to say anything negative about the Agency of Education, but I would say in the past, it has felt like we had more support and clarity from the agency staff supporting us around kind of where we might go, next steps, or kind of how to think through the authority kind of process for some of these issues. I think with the transition since Jackie and, you know, the special ed department especially being a little bit maybe more in flux, that has felt a little bit harder as a panel. We are working on kind of figuring out what the best way to continue that support moving forward consistently would be, though.
Thanks, Katie.
Other comments or questions? And I was thinking too during your presentation, I love hearing the feedback about working with the EQS subcommittee, and I'm glad that it's really been, I think, informative in both directions. You know, you probably are aware that we did the updates to the 2200 rules last year, and that the rules that pertain to Act 173 and special ed, those rules go into effect in July. It was always the intention of the state board to sort of dive back into the 2200 rule series at some point. We haven't really set a date on that, but we wanted to give the rules that were specific to Act 173 a chance to sort of go live, and then, you know, really see if anything needs to be tweaked, you know, if we didn't quite get it right. So I think at some point in the future, we will be reopening that rule series, and I think it would really be great to have your insight on that as well, just to, you know, really talk to the issue of how a student with special education needs receives that in an independent school, and what that support looks like.
Absolutely, would be happy to engage on that, however would meet the board's needs. I will just add one conversation I didn't mention that we are continuing to have this year as part of our work. As I mentioned earlier in the year, we've been bringing the panel kind of back into compliance in terms of the required roles. And part of that has been having Dana Lesperance from the community high school come on our panel as the representative of corrections or incarcerated students who might have a disability. And I think we as a panel are also looking forward to having a conversation about that school in its role as an independent school. So just wanted to mention that we had a very interesting conversation and presentation on that topic specifically. And if your board has not heard some of the data and conversation related to that conversation, I would encourage and be happy to share the presentation Dana shared with you all via email, just so that you could have that as well.
Sure. Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right. Well, Katie, thank you so much for your time this morning and for giving us the update. I love the idea that we're now hearing, you know, from the advisory council on a somewhat periodic basis. So I think we're doing quarterly updates. Is that right?
That's what I have in my notes from when we talked last time, is quarterly or every 3 to 4 months.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will look forward to hearing from you again, but in the meantime, feel free to reach out if there's anything that, you know, the board needs to be aware of.
Thank you all, and I hope you have a great day.
Great. Thank you. All right. So at this point, this takes us to agenda item H, which is our anticipated executive session. And I'm just wondering if Jamie Craybill is on the call.
Yes.
And she is. Good morning. Dan.
Yeah, if the board's inclined to go into executive session, I will not participate. Just want a heads up.
All right, thank you. Okay, and Tom, I believe you've got some motion language for us.
I do. I hereby move that the board finds that premature general public knowledge of confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the state board would clearly place the board at a substantial disadvantage.
So we've heard the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Tammy Colby. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the motion, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please raise your hand and signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? All right, the motion has carried. And Tom?
Okay, great. Now that that is carried, I hereby move that the board go into executive session to receive confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the board pursuant to 1 VSA section 313A1 capital letter F.
Thank you. You've heard the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Tammy Colby. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of adopting the motion, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please raise your hand and signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. Thank you. All right, so I think we are back out of executive session. Thank you everyone for your patience. And I think we are ready now to move on to agenda item J. Tom, I'll turn it to you.
Sure, thanks. At our last meeting of the Independent School Approval Subcommittee, we discussed 5 schools, and I'll take them in the order that they are on the agenda. The first school was United Christian Academy, excuse me, in Newport, which serves students in grades K through 12. They had 64 students at the time of the visit. None of them were publicly funded. They're served by 11 full-time and 10 part-time teachers, and they have 27 staff members on a sub-list. Their faculty need to sign a Ministry of Teaching policy. In their admissions process, they look at academics, commitment, lifestyle, personal qualifications, and an agreement to cooperate and abide by the values and policies of the schools. The facilities were found to be in good condition, and the instruction supported the school's objectives and was differentiated, both providing learning supports and some opportunities for the gifted and talented students. And the visiting team, the agency staff, was suggesting initial approval for which is maximized at 2 years, and the secretary recommended that approval be conditional on completing a signed attestation by the March state board meeting.
All right, thank you, Tom. Are there any comments or questions for Tom? Hearing none, is there a motion? Oh, Kim.
I was just gonna lower my hand. I think I'll wait for Tammy's motion.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a motion. I move to postpone consideration of initial approval until such time a completed application has been received to include a signed addendum for independent school applications, the attestation clause, without revision and consistent with Rule 2226.6 that requires the head of school to sign an assurance that the school complies with the Vermont Public Accommodations Act 9 VSA Chapter 139 in all aspects of the school's admissions and operations.
Okay, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Kim Gleason. Any discussion? Kim.
I think I would just say that is feels consistent and appropriate given the conditions of independent school approval and the requirements of our application process.
Right, and I'm remembering we had a independent school approval several months ago where there was a new rule, much like 2226.6, that went into effect last May, that required a school that operates a boarding program to have a third-party accreditation or be licensed by Department of Children and Families. And a school came up for reapproval and was not in compliance with that new rule that came into effect last May. And we treated them similarly and postponed consideration of them until such time as they were able to come into compliance with that rule. So I think this is similar treatment. It's a similar rule that went into effect last May. And we're treating the school similarly to require postponing of the consideration for initial approval until they come into compliance with Rule 2226.6. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approving the motion as read by Tammy, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Jenna, did you have a question?
She might have been raising her hand. I'm not sure.
I just note that Jenna O'Farrell voted via Teams, although she's not online. She has phoned in.
Okay, thank you. All those opposed to the motion, please signify by saying nay and raising your hand. Any abstentions? Okay, the motion has carried unanimously. Thank you.
The next school on the agenda is Mid-Vermont Christian School in White River Junction, Vermont. It serves students in grades K through 12. It is a member of the Association of Christian Schools International, serving 114 students, including pre-K, with 92 students in K through 12 at the time of the visit. 18 of those students are from New Hampshire, 74 from Vermont. 4 of those are publicly funded. They're served by 14 full-time and 11 part-time faculty members. The environment was collaborative, safe and welcoming. The facilities were well kept. The team witnessed robust instruction that was differentiated according to learners' needs. They do provide some special education services. The report said that they had push-in services from, I believe, Hartford, but at the time, that school has no LEA staff in the building, so they have hired their own services to provide that learning support. The team in the report, the team recommended a 5-year approval, which was the maximum. The secretary amended that recommendation by asking that they it's a conditional approval with a signed attestation by March state board meeting.
Thank you. Any questions for Tom? Tammy?
Just to clarify, Tom, did they sign the attestation clause without modification, or did they modify the attestation clause?
The original, the one that we received in the packet was signed, but it had a modification.
Any other questions for Tom? All right, Tammy, do you have a motion?
I move to postpone consideration of reapproval until such time a completed application has been received to include a signed addendum for independent school applications, the attestation clause, without revision and consistent with Rule 2226.6 that requires the head of school to sign an assurance that the school complies with the Vermont Public Accommodations Act 9 VSA Chapter 139 in all aspects of the school's admissions and operations.
You've heard the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Kim Gleason. Any discussion?
I just say the conditions are similar and such. I would support the motion.
All right. Yes, this is a similar analysis as what we just put forth with United Christian Academy. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approving the motion, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, please raise your hand and signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? All right, the motion is carried. Thank you.
Another school up for renewal of general education approval is Champlain Valley Christian School, which is in Vergennes, Vermont. It serves students in grades K through 8, have 47 students currently, but expect over 50 next year. They have 9 staff, 5 of whom are full-time, 4 are part-time. The agency staff on site witnessed differentiated instruction. They're impressed with the facility. They witnessed students with learning needs being served in the classroom, with IEPs actually being served in the classroom. And the school has contracted with a speech and language pathologist to meet the needs of students. The agency staff recommended a 5-year approval. They did sign the attestation without amendment.
All right, thank you, Tom. Any discussion? Tammy?
My understanding is that this is a 5-year approval, but that we have the requirements for Act 173 are coming online on July 1st. I'm just noting in the application on page 3, there are references to academic behavioral screening, as well as a statement that says that they would admit students on criteria other than academic qualifications. So I'm just curious, was there anything in the Secretary's report or in your discussions around their intention to comply with 173 when as of July 1st? I'm just curious because we're in this space, right, where we're approving schools for 5 years, but yet we know we have this rule coming online in July 1st, which has some very strict requirements with how schools who are approved for public tuition would be expected to behave with respect to admitting and treating students with disabilities.
Yeah, we did not directly or specifically address Act 173. We did ask about how they serve students with learning needs, which is where that information about serving IEPs in the classroom and contracting with the SLP, that's how that information was gleaned, but we did not specifically reference 173.
So I understand that we can't hold them to comply with 173 yet because the rules don't go into force till July 1st. But Chair, I'd like to put this on our discussion agenda, if not today, if it's sometime very soon. We have a situation here where we're being asked to approve independent schools for general education and special education in some cases. And we have new rules coming online, and it's unclear whether or not when we're approving these schools now for 5 years, what's going to happen on July 1st to make sure that those schools are actually compliant with those new rules that are coming online. And in this application in particular, I think I see potential evidence that there may be, that they might not be compliant on July 1st. So can we just put a pin in this as something that we come back and start to talk about process around this? It just seems like we're in this space where this is something we need to sort out.
Yeah, it's a tricky question because to your point, the amendments to the 2200 series that pertain to Act 173 are not yet in effect. So the schools that we're looking at now, do not need to comply with those rules because those rules are not yet live. As a practical matter, though, I think a lot of schools are starting to consider applications for the 23-24 school year. And at a certain point, I think it becomes a fair question for the board to start asking schools, what their intention is with regard to their ability or interest in complying with the rules that are related to Act 173. And I don't know if the Secretary has an update with regard to what the agency might be doing to help schools get prepared.
Yeah, I don't have an update per se, other than to say this is a priority for us, and we intend to organize some supports for independent schools this spring to help elicit from them how many intend to continue to operate under those new parameters. So it's something we're working on. I don't have any update right now, though.
Okay, I see some hand raised. I see Kim first and then Tammy.
I think if Tammy was going to follow up on where she was with that, and if it's okay, I'll have Tammy go and then I'll follow up from there.
Sure.
Thanks, Kim. I think I also just want to put a pin in the fact that we're being asked to approve schools for 5 years right now. And we know that the regs are changing on July 1st. And so it feels very indefinite to me when I'm being asked to approve a school for 5 years, that then when the rules change on July 1st, I have suspicions that they may not be compliant, and we're being asked to approve them without a process in place that will circle back on July 1st to make sure that they are compliant. So I know it's something that's in process and we got to work out, but it does, from my perspective, it puts me in a difficult position when I'm being asked to approve schools, when I see things like this in the report that signal potential non-compliance, and we're going to approve them for 5 years, and July 1st is coming, and we don't really know how it is we're going to circle back to these schools. So, Kim, I'll let you go.
Well, let me just, and I'm sorry to jump in, but I think the approval, the way the rules have been updated, they would still be approved, but they would not be approved to receive public tuition dollars. So I think that's where the twist is going to occur, effective, July 2nd. But it wouldn't change the approval status. They just wouldn't be.
Thank you for the clarification. That's what I meant. Excuse me.
Kim?
And I think that it may make sense as we put this on an agenda for a future. I believe in the interest of families making their choices, independent schools establishing their budgets, even LEAs understanding the aspect of how to be responsible for all of their students, those who are placed out of district or choosing independent school, that I'm appreciating, Dan, the priority assigned to this, because I think that is a matter of having people have the information they need to move forward, because I don't believe the state would or should be in a position to send $1 out of the system into independent schools if they've not demonstrated their compliance with 2200 that becomes effective July 1. So I think that timeline is getting short for families' decisions, and is a challenge. I'm challenged in the same way that Tammy is. And I think I've probably mentioned this every time we've brought up approvals for a time frame that exceeded beyond July 1, 2023, this disconnect with that. And then I'll say that we have this slate, we have these conditions. I think we take these up in accordance with that, but I think we might want to consider moving forward whether or not we are going to make any additional decisions regarding approval until we know what that process is for July 1 for future meetings. So that's a thing to consider. I think having a broader conversation to better understand the value of an approval if it's not approved for public tuition, and the resources used by the agency, the schools themselves, and the independent school committee in vetting schools for approval if they're not approved for public tuition. So I think all conversations for another time, but I think important to note and consider as we move forward.
Yeah, I think we're all clear that those rules have no effect today, but they are certainly coming down the pike. And I think it's fair to think that going forward, any school that is seeking initial approval or reapproval, might be asked questions about their willingness, interest, and ability to comply with the rules that are being mandated by Act 173. Tom?
Thank you. I don't know if this is for agency staff or if there's somebody from the school on the call, but it was brought to my attention that the non-discrimination statement on the website is not exactly the same as in the Public Accommodations Act. And I'm not sure if there was a conversation about that when when schools visited by agency staff, or if that was an oversight or if that's intentional. But they're not exactly the same. And so I don't know if anybody can speak to that.
Looks like Kelly Bolins is raising her hand. If you're on the phone, you need to press *6 to unmute.
Yeah, Kelly's head of school.
Okay. And Kelly, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
*6 to unmute. She just said in the text, in the chat, she can't unmute.
Try that, Kelly.
There we go.
Great.
Hi, I'm Kelly Wollens from CVCS. Hold on. I think you can maybe see me now. So we're working on the website piece. We have until July, I believe, to make sure that that is up to agreement.
In I guess in what regard? I mean, if you're talking about the Act 173 related rules, those rules become effective July 1st, but the Public Accommodations Act non-discrimination requirement is effective as of last May.
I am new to this position, so I apologize for my misunderstanding on that. I will make sure that that happens.
Thank you. Kim? Oh, you're muted. There we go.
Sorry, sorry about that. That is painful. I'm just gonna, all I needed to say is I'm gonna lower my hand because I was gonna make the point you did, Jennifer, that the Public Accommodations Act requirement was the May 2022 requirement. Thanks.
So with that, that clarification by Kelly, I don't know if we want to make a conditional approval or postpone until the website has been brought into compliance. I don't know what the pleasure of the board is.
Tammy?
Ellie, just a quick question. Are you clear how it is that your website may not be compliant with the Public Accommodations Act? You said you were new, so I thought let's just check in real quick. Are you clear what you need to do to update it?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. And you intend to do that?
Yes.
Kim?
Thank you. I wonder then if it makes sense in this case to do a conditional because the application was complete. And I guess I'm looking to Tom as in that committee. Would that make sense? The application was complete and that the addendum was completed. The noting of the inconsistency with the website, which is also a requirement in the rules, but the attestation was completed. So I'm trying to reconcile and see what maybe the committee would recommend the appropriate course forward.
That sounds right to me, Kim, because if we had caught it at the time of the committee meeting, it probably would have been resolved by now, it sounds like. And so a conditional approval until, I don't know, Kelly, how long you think it'll take you to do that, but a conditional approval until the March meeting seems right to me.
It probably will, I can get it done before March for sure.
Great. Patrick?
So I support a conditional approval. We have Kelly here, and I think she looks and she sounds genuine, and I think she's going to do it. So I support a conditional approval.
All right. Any further discussion?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I just didn't know if we had a motion that we were considering.
We don't have a motion yet. Any further discussion before we get to a motion? All right. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
So I'd move that the State Board of Education grants renewal of general education school approval to Champlain Valley Christian School in Virgins, Vermont to serve students in grades K through 8. This approval is for 5 years through June 30, 2028. This approval is conditional on the requirement that the school reports to the Agency of Education within 5 business days whenever any changes occur in enrollment programs, policies, facilities, financial capacity, staffing, or administration during the approval. It is also conditional on the requirement that the school brings its non-discrimination statement on its website into compliance with the Vermont Public Accommodations Act by the March meeting of the State Board of Education.
Right. You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Seconded by Patrick.
All right, seconded by Patrick. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving Tom's motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay and raising your hand. Any abstentions? All right, the motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next school also for renewal of general education approval is the East Burke School. The East Burke School came before our committee earlier in the fall, and there was discrepancy between what the school thought they had submitted and what the agency had received. There was a second site visit in September, in which the agency team found that the school had addressed some of the deficiencies that had been seen earlier in that year, including in lesson planning. They had hired a consultant in the cleanliness and organization of materials, remodeling some classrooms. So I should start by saying East Burke serves students in grades 8 through 12. They have a maximum enrollment of 18. They now are at 12 with 2 full-time teachers plus a visiting artist and the contracted counselor. They received technical assistance from the agency regarding state assessment, and the agency staff recommended a 1-year renewal based on their view of the financial capacity of the school. I'll get to that in a second. The enrollment policy was discussed at length in our meeting. They have a rolling admission policy with a consensus model. They are developing a tool to go along with that model and developing a more robust enrollment policy. The financial position of the school had improved quite dramatically over the between the time of the visit and the time our committee took up this this approval. Their revenue is up 200%. They have quadrupled their fundraising. There are some things that gave us some concern. They have a forgivable loan that needs to be spent over the next calendar year, but they have a plan in place to replace that money. They also have a plan in place, a sustainability plan that allows them to survive with as few as 6 students. And the way they do that is the directors take a pay cut in order in those situations. They still need to fill a finance position right now. Their treasurer is playing that role, and they know they need to fill that role. The committee recommended, or at least at the end of our discussion, thought that 2 years might be better than 1, seeing as how the school has spent almost the entirety of the last 4 years in the approval process, back and forth with the agency. We did think, though, that an update in May of next year on their financial position, their enrollment projections, and a sustainability plan would be wise. But we were, at the end of our conversation, we were ready to recommend a 2-year approval conditioned on getting that update in May 2024. Happy to answer any questions.
So Tom, I'm just wondering, with the 2-year approval and the reporting back next May, just because in a worst case scenario, what would happen if they came back next May and did not have assurances of sustainability?
Right. If they did not have a viable sustainability plan, that's a condition of approval, and so they would lose approval at that point. But what this does, what this does is that it doesn't make them go through the whole approval process with everything. It really targets their attention and ours on financial sustainability.
Okay, thank you. Kim?
And then in line with our earlier conversation, I'm trying to remember because we had a number of these this time around. How will this align with the conversation we had regarding July 1 of this year and approved to receive public tuition?
So I think East Burke would be, they're so individualized and have such a good relationship with the local LEAs, serving a niche for some students who thrive under non-traditional education settings. I think based on my conversation with Nathan Bradshaw and Megan Darling, they are poised to and expect to comply with Act 173.
In doing so, do we have a sense of, I guess as I'm more thinking about the 2-year window that you're suggesting. Doing so may have additional financial considerations and burden, and I'm wondering if it is wise to extend a 2-year approval without understanding more fully what that impact will be on their financial situation.
Yeah, my suspicion is that it will help their financial position as they receive more publicly funded students. But that's why we thought that the 1 year, if we made it conditional, let them focus only on their financial plan for a year, rather than having to submit a whole another full application. So the way that I see this, Kim, is that they have to report to us on their financial position in a year, not a whole new approval, but their approval is under consideration, up for consideration in next May. And either it's up or down next May. They have to do a full application after June 30, 2025. They're up for a full application process. But everything seems to be in place except for the financial plan, and they'll be under the same obligations that all independent schools will be under once Act 173 hits in July. So I don't know what I'm happy to hear another proposal. We thought that it would be wise for them to spend their time looking after this financial situation, which seems to be the key issue from this visit, rather than doing a full application.
And the agency's recommendation for 1 year was
based on the financial capacity concerns.
I guess the financial capacity matter can both drive a lot of things and be driven by a lot of things. So I guess I'm pausing a little bit on the 2-year consideration, not whether or not it'd be approved, but rather the duration of the approval. And I'm hearing you. Yeah.
It's a 4-month process to apply, and I just don't. The committee didn't think that would be a wise use of time.
And I guess as I think about it from the accountability for the public dollars, it is maybe one of the bigger considerations. It was one of those things that we used to have to be responsible for, going out and checking in if they failed, any independent school failed to be financially viable. I remember early on in my tenure on this board, that was a big body of work. I know that that's no longer our responsibility, but I'm just pausing, and I would love to hear other thoughts on the 2-year. I hear you. I just it's never just about financial capacity. Is never just about the money in the spreadsheets and the budget. It is impacted by everything. Yeah.
Any further discussion? Right, hearing none. And Tom, I'm sorry, have you read the motion?
I have not made a motion.
Okay.
That'll give people time to think even further on this. I move that the State Board of Education grants renewal of general independent school approval to the East Burke School in East Burke, Vermont, to serve students in grades 8 through 12. This approval is for 2 years through June 30, 2025. This approval is conditional on the requirement that the school reports to the Agency of Education within 5 business days whenever any changes occur in enrollment, programs, policies, facilities, financial capacity, staffing, or administration during the approval period. In addition, this approval is conditional on the requirement that the school submit to the State Board of Education a sustainability plan, a financial update, and enrollment projection that shows the school to be financially viable by May 2024.
Thank you. You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
I'd second that.
Seconded by Lyle. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the motion, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
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 I'm sorry, I think I was going to offer an amendment, but I didn't get it clicked fast enough. So I'm not sure where we stand on that. So I'm more comfortable with 1 year, given a lot of moving parts. So that's fine. I'll just vote against it.
All those opposed, please raise your hand and signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Okay. And considering that it is not a unanimous vote, do we need to do a roll call? Or is it clear?
I think
From my
supposed to do a roll
perspective,
call.
I don't think you need to do a roll call. I mean, unless a board member makes that motion and asks for it and so forth. It's not necessarily mandated just because it's a split vote.
Okay, thank you. Emily Simmons, I see your hand is raised.
She will correct me.
To overrule my boss, that there's a specific open meeting law requirement when a meeting is held entirely remotely, that any non-unanimous vote has to be taken by roll.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Maureen, would you please call the roll?
Sure thing.
Or
Patrick Brown?
Yes, in favor.
Kim Gleason?
No.
Tammy Colby?
Yes.
Richard Werner?
Aye.
Gabrielle Lucci?
Yes.
Tom Lovett?
Yes.
Lyle Jepson?
Yes.
Mara Severson?
Yes. Oh, well, I can't vote, but yeah.
Jenna O'Farrell?
Yes.
This is the chair voting.
Yes, in the affirmative. All right.
Secretary voting? No.
All right, so the motion has carried. Thank you all. And Tom, back to you again.
Right. The final school on our slate today is the Mill School in Winooski. This also was a visit in May. Kim, you still have your hand?
No, I was just I did want to clarify that it was my negative vote was for the duration and not otherwise, that they were not qualified to be reapproved. So
Thank you.
Sorry, I'll be quicker on any amendment requests. Thanks.
So this was schools visited in May 2022. Middle school serves students in grades 6 through 12. At the time of the visit, they had 22 students. It is a for-profit school run by an organization out of New York. They are fully enrolled with a wait list. They are committed to returning students to their local schools and communities. They offer a personalized education in a small setting, and they are relentlessly optimistic about young people and their education. The agency staff, when they visited, Saw lots of admirable things about the way that the school was serving students. They did have two concerns that caused them to recommend a 2-year approval. One was they were concerned about how attendance was being taken, and especially documentation of when students left school. And they had some concern over instruction in that not all classrooms that they observed were differentiating instruction. The school has 4 strategies for differentiation that they have in their materials and that they foster, but on observation, there was one class that was not differentiating. So those were the concerns. We did meet with the new director, who I think is actually on the call, Danielle Albrecht, who had just come on since the visit and had put new systems in place that significantly tightened up the attendance concerns and the documentation of students' attendance, and had put other new systems in place that have tightened up the other concerns as well. So because Danielle did such a great job of explaining and the system she has in place and has comes to the school with experience in that area, the committee thought that instead of just a 2-year, being mindful both of the backlog, but also the amount of time it takes to go through approval, that we would extend it to 3 years through June 30, 2026, instead of the 2 years that the agency staff and the secretary had recommended.
Any questions or comments? Kim?
Could someone from the agency speak to the 2-year recommendation? Or
this is Deb Ormsby from the independent school team, and we had recommended 2 years because we felt that it would tighten up the opportunity to provide technical assistance if needed.
Thank you.
Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, based on what Tom just shared, I'm comfortable with the 3-year as well. Just thought I'd chime in.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Is there so in this case, there a school providing services to students with special programming and special needs. So their approval and how we go about the July 1 consideration, I assume, is going to be sort of blanketed even for therapeutic schools, or they may not even be therapeutic schools. I'm not sure, but I guess I'm going to ask us to just better understand what that looks like. Even though we don't know what the process is going to be, is how does this affect them differently than other schools we've approved?
So if you remember, this school is very similar to, say, a Kendall Farm school, although it's not a designated agency school, but it provides the same kind of service to local LEAs. And if you remember, there are parts of 2200 that would not apply to a school that's only providing special education services, or whose students are all receiving special education services, like Kendall Farm, like Mill School. But they're well poised to comply with 173.
Okay, thank you. And it was helpful for the secretary to offer feedback on the duration. Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion?
Not, I'll make
If
a
none,
motion.
yes.
I move the State Board of Education grants renewal of general and special education approval to serve youth in grades 6 through 12 in the disability categories of autism spectrum disorder, emotional disturbance, other health impairment, specific learning disability, and traumatic brain injury to the middle school, Winooski, Vermont. This approval is for 3 years through June 30, 2026. This approval is conditional on the requirement that the school reports to the Agency of Education within 5 business days whenever any changes occur in enrollment, programs, policies, facilities, financial capacity, staffing, or administration during the approval period.
You've heard the motion. Is there a second? And seconded by Tammy Colby. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving the motion, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, please raise your hand and signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? All right, the motion's carried. Thank you. And thank you to the subcommittee for what I know has been a lot of work and careful attention to detail. So thank you. And to the agency as well. I mean, I think the bottom line here is that there's a lot of oversight of the schools, and it's always this, tension between recognizing that independent schools are independent, but also ensuring that they are complying with statute and our rules. So it takes a lot of people to get it done, and I just really appreciate the work that is being done by everyone.
It's a significant amount of oversight and a lot of work by a lot of people. I mean, the agency staff does the heavy lifting. They're the ones who go to the school and write the report, and that we rely on for that information.
Yeah. Thank you. So that takes us through item J. I think I'm a little bit stuck. I know we've got some students who are dialing in at noon. And I know that we're also really off schedule on our diversity, equity, and inclusion presentation by Lamoille North. And my recollection is that they were only available either at 11:30 or 12:20. So I'm just taking a pause here to try to sort out the next couple agenda items. And Patrick, you look like you know something.
Thanks, Chair Samuelson. I was just going to ask for your kind consideration in moving them up, maybe to item L or whatever is appropriate for you, whatever is possible.
Well, I'm wondering, could we possibly do the presidential scholars at noon, just because I know that these students are leaving class to come for 10 minutes, so it's kind of short, but could we do them and then after that do Lamoille North? And then I'm wondering if that's going to run into Lincoln and throw them off their schedule. And I don't even know if Lincoln's on the call yet.
So I think some of them are here already. I did see Maria come in earlier.
This is from Lamoille?
Yes. Yeah.
So, but I'm wondering if we can do them at 12:10.
Okay.
If that's okay with them. And it looks like, I'm going to put Jen Oldham on the spot. So, Ms. Oldham, I see that you have just dialed in. I'm going to put you on the spot for a second if you have a minute.
Yes, I'm on the spot. Go for it.
All right, so we're a little off schedule and I'm trying to just fit all the pieces together. We've got a couple of students that are scheduled to join us from 12 to 12:10. That I'd like to preserve that time just in deference to them leaving school to do this 10-minute presentation. We are also behind schedule and Lamoille North has not yet presented. So if it's okay with you, what I would propose is to do the students from 12 to 12:10, then do Lamoille North from 12:10 to 12:35, 12:40, and then have you guys come in at that point, if that works for you.
Completely fine. Probably works a little better for me anyway.
Okay, terrific. Okay. I appreciate your flexibility. And then I think the other things are just state board things, so we can just rearrange our schedule accordingly. So I think what we'll do is we've got 2.5 minutes. We can do the future meeting planning now, unless someone thinks that that's going to be more than 2 minutes. I know that in March, we're looking
Honestly,
at
I think we could probably do a very 2-minute-ish EQS update if you wanted to take that off the agenda.
Okay. Oh, and
which is
secretary.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to ask if we could do the action on the calendar waiver at some point. I'm going to have to transition to testify at some point. So,
okay. Why don't we do that now? Because I think that's going to be a fairly short item. Okay, so we're going to move out of order, and this is item P on the agenda, the calendar waivers.
So I can speak to this real quick if that's okay. So I think, some of the board members who were with us during the pandemic remember there's a mechanism in your regulation to approve waivers of the school calendar. This is when historically it's when things happen, like when pipes freeze or what have you, and then schools have difficulty making up days. So there's a mechanism that allows them to pursue a waiver with the state board to basically not have to make up the days they missed. During the pandemic, since there was so much disruption to schooling, the state board gave the secretary authority to process those waivers just out of sheer logistical consideration. We're certainly not seeing the number of requests coming in this year, but I think it still might be in the interest of the board to delegate that authority to me to process these waivers. They're largely administrative process, and I think would free up the board's capacity otherwise. The second point of the request is to allow me to go retroactive before February 1. The way the rule reads, it's only for absences or days that occur after February 1. We've had, with the staffing shortages in schools, and there's been some illness with flu and what have you, RSV this year, I would like to consider waiver requests since the beginning of the year and not just after February 1. So those are the two components of this request.
Kim, quickly.
Do we need a motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I move that we accept the secretary's recommended action, that the state board authorize the secretary on its behalf waivers for an unanticipated closures under 16 BSA 1071C in the 2022-2023 year, and that the state board waive application of the state board rule 2311.1 for the entirety of the 2022-2023 year. And if I might add, will we just get a report back on those waivers as approved by the secretary? So that's the mission.
Yeah, so we'll create an expedited process using a web form, easy to do for us to do reports on. Again, it's not going to be near the volume that we saw during the pandemic, but I think it would be useful both to the board and school districts to authorize me to be able to process these.
Thank you. So that was the motion, with the only addendum being that the secretary will provide a report on those waivers at a future time.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Tom. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the motion as amended by Kim, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
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 Please signify by saying nay and raising your hand. Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to continue out of order, and this is going to be item N on the agenda. It looks like we've gotten some of our presidential scholars joining us today, so I'll give them a minute to join us.
Yeah. Unmuting. Hello.
Hi, we can't see you. Are you just calling in?
Our camera should be on.
Yeah, it says it's on.
Our camera was disabled by like the administrators, I think.
like on the meeting.
Oh, there you are.
That's what it says.
Hi there. And I saw there were a couple of others that were coming in as well. I don't know if we have Haley or Anna or Matthew. I have to confess, I'm a little, I've got a leg up. I know Amelia and Andrew, so.
I'm Anna, but it says that the owners of the meeting says I can't turn my camera on.
Oh.
I'm working on getting cameras enabled. Thank you.
So, and while we're bringing you guys in, I just want to, with my thanks to the agency, I'm going to give a brief overview about the Presidential Scholars Program. It was established in 1964 by executive order of President Johnson to recognize and honor some of our nation's most distinguished graduating high school seniors. In 1979, the program was extended to recognize students who demonstrate exceptional talent in the visual, creative, and performing arts. In 2015, the program was again extended to recognize students who demonstrate ability and accomplishment in career and technical education fields. The Vermont Presidential Scholars Program recognizes graduating high school seniors who show outstanding scholarship, leadership, and service to their communities. These outstanding students were selected based on nominations from teachers, administrators, and fellow students. They are recognized in 3 categories: general, arts and career technical education. Among this year's scholars are technologists, writers, student leaders, advocates, mentors, and volunteers. This group of scholars includes students working to destigmatize mental health, bring new facilities to their schools, prioritize equity in their school libraries, found new school clubs, master the trumpet, and teaching other students to code. So with that, I would like to welcome all of you for coming today, especially taking time out of your school day to be here. And we just really wanted to take a couple of minutes to recognize you. And if you guys wouldn't mind just sharing who you are, where you're from, what your plans are next year, and any thoughts you have about being recognized.
Hi, I'm Andrew Clare. I live in Dover, Vermont. I go to BBA. What else? Next year I plan to go to university in North Carolina. And then future plans. I plan to be a economics major with concentration in finance, taking it one step at a time, so I haven't thought too far ahead.
Great. Thanks for being here.
All right, I'll go next. My name is Amelia DeYoung. I live in Winhall, Vermont, and I also attend BBA. Yeah, my future plans are to attend Washington University in St. Louis. I'm attending the business school there because like a large part of me becoming a presidential scholar was kind of focused on wanting to develop my community. So future plans, I'm very interested in entrepreneurship and hopefully looking into ways that I can use like business startups and such to help my community.
Thank you. And Anna?
My name is Anna. I live in Elmore, Vermont, but go to Pupils Academy, which is in Morrisville. I don't know where I'm going next year, but right now my top choice is Georgetown, and I'll be going for international relations with political science major.
Great. And I know we were expecting maybe 1 or 2 others, but it doesn't look like they're able to join us.
I think some of them have just put in the chat that they're here.
Okay, perfect.
I don't know if they're unmuted though.
Well, I've unmuted the ones that have called in and everyone I can see, so.
I think we were waiting for Haley and Matthew.
I'm Matthew. I live in Craftsbury and I attend Craftsbury Academy. I'm only a junior though, so I haven't thought through the college plans yet. But I do intend to continue writing and continue all of the arts pursuits that got me this honor.
Thank you. So board members, any comments or questions for anybody?
So I just want to say congratulations. And for those of you going to college out of state, once you're finished, don't forget to come back to this wonderful Green Mountain State and contribute to the workforce. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just add congratulations and impressed with the diversity of your skills and interests and the high standards you set for yourself and your communities.
All right, anyone else?
Thank you all. And I would just say, Jen, I'm seeing that note in the chat that says if you unmute Scott Farr, then Emma, Dana, and Damien can say hi.
Okay, that might be a question for Maureen. Star 6 to unmute. Okay, great.
Maureen's like the Wizard of Oz here.
Should still hit star 6 to unmute.
And you guys all met each other in Montpelier a week or so ago, correct? They got invited up to Montpelier for a dinner. Did you also meet with legislators at that point? Or was it just families and?
It was mostly just families for the award ceremony.
Okay.
Say hi, guys.
Hey.
Hello. Introduce yourself.
There we go.
I guess I'll go first. I'm Damien Stagner. I'm a student at RVTC's Hands-on Computer Systems program in my second year.
Are you going to college?
My immediate plans are to continue working with Simon Pierce in their IT department in Windsor.
And my name's Emma Dana. I'm a senior at Springfield High School and in my third year of the Advanced Manufacturing and Engineering program here at River Valley Technical Center. I'm currently doing an independent study in architecture, and I'll be headed to college somewhere next year to study architecture. I'm also Skills USA Vermont's vice president this year.
Welcome. So I do love, just in the half dozen of you guys that we have here today, just how varied your interests are in your career paths too. So it's nice to hear about. And I often say that we have 2 student members on our state board, and they give a report every month, and it typically ends up being the highlight of our meetings and really just reminds us of why we're doing the work that we're doing, because basically everyone here who serves on the board is here because we believe very much in the power of education and in Vermont. And it's nice to be able to have this interaction with the students in the community because it really solidifies the work that we're doing. So thank you guys all very much for coming. I appreciate you taking time out of your day. And if anyone has any concluding thoughts or otherwise, we can just let you guys get back to school. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. And congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. And I think this will then take us to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion presentation by Lamoille North Supervisory Union. So Patrick, let me turn it to you if you want to do some introductions for us.
Sure. Thanks, Chair Samuelson. So my opening comment is that since starting or coordinating this project, I intentionally tapped into some of the rural schools so that it's not just Chittenden County, but be more inclusive, be more diverse. And so today we have Lamoille North Supervisory Union, and they are led by Maria Davis, who is their diversity coordinator. And we have some young folks with us today. We have student voices that you're going to hear from. And so I'm going to turn it over to Maria.
Hi, good afternoon now, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes, and let me just say thank you very much for your flexibility with this. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I was thinking the youth as well. They have to go back to class, but no worries. They were fine with it. So I'm Maria Davies. I'm the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Coordinator here at Lamoille North Supervisory District, and I really appreciate this time. I'm not going to talk too much. I really want the youth to talk and for you to get to know them. They're wonderful human beings, and I do what I do because of them. So you're my youth. Maybe you're going first.
Hi, my name is Jacob Whitlock. I'm in 8th grade at Lamoille Middle School, and I'm going to be talking about some of the challenges schools face. Challenges in schools include offensive behavior and language toward others and harassment as well. We need to make changes to our schools because right now is a time that kids are struggling. Respecting teachers and other students in our school is an issue. Much of this behavior includes sexism, racism, and other forms of discrimination. Our school, Lamoille, has been working together to build a better community, encouraging more teamwork-based activities. One of the ways we have done this is the student council group. Respect is something all schools should work on to make the schools and staff feel safer and more inclusive. It is a difficult thing to do, but our students at Lamoille have taken the first step toward becoming a
Hi, I'm Ruth Downey. I'm also an 8th grader at Lamoille. I'm part of the Kindness Committee, which is our student council group, and our goals in this group is to create a more inclusive school environment. It helps our school by taking the voices of our youth and making the school community grow around the youth. We plan to make the school more inclusive and inform more about how we can include how we are encouraging students and staff to welcome all types of people. In this group, we come up with ideas for Spirit Week and theme days for more school spirit. Some days we have done so far have been dress like your favorite sports team, flannel day, medieval day, and many others. These activities help our school come together and develop kindness and inclusion. Right before winter break, we organized a day where we were able to hang out and watch movies. Students in the committee also served lunch to the entire middle school to help out the cafeteria. Sometimes we'll coordinate friendly competitions between homerooms, like door decorating competitions and dressing our homeroom teachers like snow people. Recently, we've started running morning announcements where we tell the school what National Day it is, what's for lunch, announcements about athletics, and inspirational quotes and jokes. These activities and competitions bring us together and inspire. Our plan is to hear the voices of our youth, not just the members, and change the way our school system is set up to help kids learn.
I'm Lily Murphy. I'm an 8th grader at Lamoille Village.
So, and I'm really sorry to interrupt. I'm having trouble hearing, and I think maybe if the students could step closer, that might help. Sorry, we want to hear what you're saying.
The Morning Union has had multiple successes in the school year so far. During the second quarter of this year, each student in the middle level made paper lanterns for messages. Each student got to express themselves, be creative, and make lanterns for the team. These lanterns were then hung up around the school to bring positivity to our school building every day. And more recently, the whole school, middle and high school, have joined together to beautify the school. The middle level visual arts teacher has planned meetings and events with students who are interested in beautifying the school. The staff at our middle school did a great job making fun activities. And for the middle school, it's split up into 4 teams with an equal number of students. And every quarter, one team gets an opportunity to attend an assembly for the whole school to watch and express their hobbies, talents, and abilities. At these assemblies, students get awards to be recognized for their respectful and positive. That's it. So yeah, so we really try and give our youth agency and voice the work that they want to have happen in their school, so their school feels more inclusive, more inclusive, and so they're able to enjoy coming into school every day. And everybody is at different levels on what they want to do, where they want to go. So they organize themselves. I just give them ideas how to move forward. And
leaves the movement have been with me since last academic year. As soon as I started working here, they came to me and said, we want to change the school culture for the better, and we need ideas. And they pretty much started looking at different things they can do, and all I do is really support them in their efforts. So it's been wonderful working with them, and I'm looking forward to seeing them at the high school where my office is based every single day again. Do you have any questions for any of the youth?
Board members, any questions? Kim?
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I think it's important to remind ourselves that there's so much impact happening even before you get to high school, but I'm wondering if there are any particular clubs or interests you're especially excited about when you get to the high school.
Well, one thing we did start in middle school was the social justice committee. And this year there's been a lot going on, so we weren't really able to really focus on that. But in the high school, it's a really important again. And it's kind of the same things as the kindness committee, but it's just the three of us started it, and there's some other members that are in it too. But we wanted to organize some activities to really help the school community and make it more positive. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, me too. I think that last year, we had a lot of different whisper parties because the student council is less student led than this group that we have created. And I think that it's good for us to try to encourage other students to bring more social justice into our school community. And I think next year when we have more freedom, I guess, then we can have the opportunity for that.
Thank you so much. I'm sure the high school is excited to have you lean in. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you. I know you're on a tight schedule, so I'm happy to let you go back to what you're doing. Thank you so much. I appreciate this time.
Well, thank you so much for coming. And again, I'm really sorry about the time switcheroo, but I appreciate you guys being here. And thank you for sort of shepherding these interests. So
thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Patrick. It was a pleasure. I hope you invite us again.
Have a good day. Thank you. All right. So why don't let's go back to agenda item K, which is the Education Quality Standards Subcommittee update.
We provided in your package what was, until I think last night, the most recent draft of our body of work. The subcommittee has gone through top to bottom to try and make consistency in language and make some decisions, and have identified some areas that we would like the Act 1 group to take a look at, because to ensure that our changes haven't unintentionally impacted the meaning from the perspective of a more diverse body that the Act 1 working group was. And we have identified a couple of areas for the AOE to confirm we've used proper references from a technical standpoint. And Tammy helped our document be more readable in that we've been trying to track the formatting came to us as it did, and then our changes and those from the AOE created some impact on the formatting that made it a little bit difficult to follow and read. And so we've maintained that as a document that people could see the comments so that you could know sort of the evolution of the language as it arrives now. But we've also provided, Tammy, thank you, a clean document for people to read more easily that I think shows the changes that Act 1 made and our recommended language. So changes from the original EQS to Act 1 EQS to our EQS, I think are all tracked, I'm pretty sure, Tammy, right? But the comments are gone.
It's a clean copy. There are no track changes in the clean copy, right? So we have a clean copy that we'll be working off of from here forward that reflects all of the agreements that have been made by the subcommittee through our meeting last week. We have 2 more subcommittee meetings on the books right now, because we have, I think, by my estimation, sort of 4 buckets of things that need to be tidied up. But I would say that we're working hard to land the plane here, and these are more tidying up kind of things that need to get taken care of. As Kim mentioned, we asked Act One the Act One group to check in on some of the changes that the subcommittee recommended through our own review over the last few weeks, mostly just to tighten up language and some additional clarifications. We've been in communication with the agency. Thank you to Secretary French for getting back to us today. Around some clarifications that we had that sort of arose from our own review, as well as the need for a discussion about aligning a couple of the sections of the EQS with the new DQS rule that has been submitted now for ICAR. And then we had a few other substantive things, one with respect to understanding better which section, what already is in statute that for requirements for independent schools and how that overlaps with the EQS, and if there's potential places in the EQS and that statute that don't align, we might consider sort of extending certain sections of the EQS to independent schools. But the subcommittee is going to be making a recommendation to the board to align the application of the EQS to application of the EQS generally with statute, as opposed to including in the preamble some specific recommendation about to whom it applies. So I think those are the big buckets of things we have to resolve. And then our goal is to have that in front of the full board in a special meeting as soon as we have that resolved for a more comprehensive presentation of all the work that we've done and our recommendations to the board for your consideration. So hopefully we can get this tidied up and filed soon. So Kim, did you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think as you finished up, Tammy, you were referencing the statement of purpose, and that had been an area that sort of sat on the shelf as we worked on the content of the rules, and just the way we approached it in this draft of the language was to center the student and reference to the institutions to whom it applies by referencing statute. And then again, to Tammy's point, there may be sections that, driven by Act One and centering equity of opportunity for all Vermont students, there are important sections that may appropriately apply to independent schools, but perhaps not the entirety, in that, staffing and governance would be particularly challenging. So we recognize that.
And we may be coming back to the full board with recommendations for next steps with respect to the independent school rules, as well as potential addenda that could be put into the accreditation processes. So we may come back with some additional considerations for all of us to discuss about sort of how to align these 2 rules and up with one another, as well as ensure that we have sort of the kind of oversight and monitoring that I think is conceived by Act One for independent schools as well, and to do that, however, through the accreditation process. Tom, did you want to add something on that? Did I get that right?
Yeah, I'm preparing a crosswalk between the EQS and the ASNE and NEASC standards and indicators, and I've been in touch with both organizations, and they are willing partners in that work.
Yeah, and they've been really great. They came and testified before us, and so I think this is a real opportunity for across the board. So Tom, thanks for doing that.
And I think importantly, our committee recognized that not every independent school comes through those accreditation processes. So it is not a delegated responsibility. It is one avenue potentially. So I think we are trying to conceive of the sort of both and not miss something. And I know that we also our outside legal counsel review, now that we have a more stable document, I think we'll be positioned to be able to ensure that we're properly referencing legislation, point to any areas of concern. I think we have maybe a more direct set of questions now that we finally got ourselves to a place of really going through each of our grammatical changes, consistency changes. And I think I'll point to our keen interest in collaborating with the agency on the accountability measures and the district quality standards where they are most appropriately referenced within this document. And then if there's a timeline for implementation, what that looks like to ensure there's not a lapse of accountability, if you will, or a lapse of process expectation while one version is ramping up and the other ramping down. So those are two outstanding issues that we look forward to more feedback from the agency on. Did we miss anything, Patrick?
I just want to add one thing, though, that this has been a hardworking committee, and recognize Tom and Patrick and Kim and everybody's hard work. Like, this has been a lot of really good work, and thanks to everybody for leaning in on this.
I was going to say exactly the same thing, much like, acknowledging Tom and Jenna and Patrick and Lyle for their work with the independent school approvals and the agency. I'm just going to acknowledge again that this has been a volume of work, and I really appreciate how thoughtfully and diligently you guys are going through it. I look forward to seeing the final product, but I think, you've been very thoughtful at every step of the way. Thank you, guys. Other comments or questions?
If board members are starting to take a peek at the documents, if there are questions or concerns that come up, certainly let Kim and let us know. We still have a couple subcommittee meetings. I think our goal is to try to give you something that is in a form that we can really have a focused discussion and be able to resolve. So if you're seeing things that are concerning or unclear that you think would benefit from more discussion or even testimony or something along those lines, let us know sooner rather than later so we can fold that into the process to make sure that that's taken into account.
I think timing wise, I don't know that we have 2 more meetings of our committee on the books. I think those will inform how close we will be to potentially, I don't know, Jen, I think it's at your consideration as well. What makes most sense? If the March agenda has space for a thorough conversation, great. If we think that we may need something special before that to dive deeper, potentially taking action at some point before or after, at the March meeting, potentially. I know our hope is to not be too out of line with the timing on DQS and quality assurance. And I know that the Secretary and the AOE has begun that process. So maybe stay tuned, and Tammy and I can collaborate with you as we see our timeline firming up. And we have a better sense of if there are if the timeline for implementation is how that goes too. So
yeah, I think that makes sense. So we can kind of keep in touch as far as like how you guys are going with your scheduling. And then keep in mind, if we send out a doodle poll for a special meeting, what I'm finding is from the time the doodle poll goes out until the time we could possibly have a meeting, 2 weeks sounds like a realistic time frame. So I think, whether it happens during the March meeting or whether we do a special meeting, we can touch base, as you guys continue along, and then really decide how it plays better.
And a reminder for any new board member, it's ICAR first. It's State Board full approval. It comes out of our committee, goes to State Board for full approval. State Board full approval then goes to ICAR. So then there's a formal public feedback process that would then include LCAR at the very end. There's still more work to be done, but our hope is to be at a place where we've anticipated what we could for need of additional feedback to the original proposal we received back in April, and that's been why it's taken so long, I think. to make sure we've taken in as much as we can.
Just a quick question. I realized that I may have made an assumption. Is Secretary French still on? I can't tell. I was just wondering if we could get an update on DQS and did it get filed? Maybe we lost Secretary French. I see Emily's hand. Hey, Emily.
Hi. The DQS rules were filed with ICAR last week, where the agency is on the ICAR agenda for next Thursday. That's the 22nd, I believe, for the regular February ICAR meeting.
Thanks, Emily. Congratulations. Thank you.
Great. Any other comments or questions? All right. Well, thank you again for this voluminous work. It's very much appreciated. So at this point, I'm going to skip over item L. I think we will finish our meeting with that. And I'm going to turn it over to item O, which is the Lincoln School District update, because I believe Jen Oldham is back on the phone with us, or back in person online. I thought I saw her.
Jen, you will need to hit *6 to unmute.
Okay, hi. Madeline Burke and Brittany Gilman. I'll text them to say we're starting, but we can go ahead and start.
Okay. I think Madeline might be in.
Madeline is on.
Okay.
Yes, I'm on.
Okay, great.
All right. So Ms. Oldham, I'll turn it over to you if you want to start, and then we can have questions from board members.
Sure. I guess let me ask you, would you like me to go through what is sort of documented in the report? Or I can just, give a quick overview and then you all can ask questions.
I would say probably the quick overview, because I would imagine that most board members have read what you've submitted. So we can do the quick overview and then, questions either based on your presentation today or what's in the update that you provided.
Okay. So in terms of a quick overview, we have been, continuing aggressively on the process of preparing to be our own supervisory district. And as I mentioned in the report, key to that has been engaging consultants with more experience than board members have to guide us in that process, as well as to help us deal with things in a way that we can't deal with everything at the same time with the same level of energy. So we've had to focus on certain things, and certain things will have to wait. So look at what that prioritization is. And prioritization has been around looking at organizational structure, getting in place data management systems so we can do data transfer from MAUSD. Looking at, teacher contracts, and then, some of the key elements that, what the different strategies are for meeting some of the key elements like transportation, facilities management, things like that. So where we are is, quite far along in all aspects related to sort of the infrastructure of the supervisory district, and where we're focusing now is on still hiring some of the key staff positions, getting our insurance contracts, in place, getting the data transfer done, which is obviously MAUSD has both paper files and data files that require physical effort to move, as well as some sophisticated data management transfer system. So some of those transfers will happen sort of later toward the end of the May, June, because MAUSD is still using that information, but we will have all the computer platforms in place to have that. And we believe we have raised enough money to support all those transition activities, but we have relationships with banks if we need to get out a line of credit or a small loan. Timing is everything in terms of when payments need to be made, and things that are in the budget for the coming year may need to be paid this year. So just a lot of looking at the cash flow as well. And I think genuine excitement about where we are and the support that the community's given us, and fully confident that we can succeed. So I will let you ask the specific questions that you may have.
All right. Well, thank you for the overview. Board members, I'm sure there are questions about the presentation or the report. Tammy.
Yeah, thank you for the overview, and it's clear that there's been a lot of activity and work. I have a couple questions. One, I didn't see in here like a timeline or a work plan for completing all of these things. I mean, there are still some pretty important things to work out, like contracts with your teachers and hiring and things along those lines. Do you have a timeline, sort of a Gantt chart or something along those lines? This is what this looks like, or did I miss it? Sorry if I missed it.
It was initially going to be appendix whatever, and I will confess that it has gotten very detailed and very long, and I was not able to consult with the rest of the team in time to decide how to put it in a more consumable way for you all to understand it. But I'm certainly happy. One of the things I was thinking about was actually just doing one timeline for every, right now we have a timeline that has everything on it, but do one timeline per sort of key area. And that's something I can create from what we have in the next week or so.
I think that would be really helpful, and maybe you could pass that along to us and we could append it when you do. I think it also might be helpful to communicate that to your voters too in April, to just say, like, here's where we are. But I had some higher level questions, and I want to make sure that I'm understanding what I'm seeing. Am I understanding, just to clarify, that the projected spending next year is going to be for about $22,000 per student? And that with that comes a 14-cent tax increase?
Well, the 14-cent tax increase is largely driven by our CLA, unfortunately. We would not have seen a tax increase had our CLA been, in a 5% range or stuff, but we were about 13% because there has not been a reappraisal in a while. So the reappraisal is ongoing, but the driver of the increased tax rate is the CLA.
It's a CLA, but there's still going to be a 14-cent increase. Did I understand that correct? Okay. Yes. And the per pupil spending is about 22,000?
Yes.
Okay. Related to that, a couple things that I noted in your report that it would be helpful for me to better understand. The first one is there are a couple references in here to that there's going to be some sort of additional review of students' IEPs for cost and appropriateness. Can you speak to that?
I can.
I'm going to let Madeline speak to that. She's our acting superintendent and is our special education expert.
Yeah, I certainly can, Tammy. I'm happy to do that. So there were a couple of things. One of the things early on that Patrick at MAUSD agreed to was to allow me to have access to EdPlan for a comprehensive review of all students' IEPs and comprehensive evaluations, which I did. And there were a lot of questions that arose out of that, and I've had some conversations with McGeorge about that. And it was a little hard for me to necessarily line up the special education expenditures that Lincoln was being assessed with the documents. And so we do believe that there was a significant difference in, for example, excess cost, lower to Lincoln than was projected. And I have, with the permission of Beth and the parent, I sat in both of those IEP transition meetings this year and conferred that those costs are not going to be what they were initially projected to be.
So
Tammy,
are you modifying the IEP? Is that what you're doing, or to achieve cost savings? Is that what I'm understanding?
No, not at all. Not at all. I have no jurisdiction over the IEP, and so I didn't act as the LEA with parent permission and Beth McGeorge's permission. I participated in those meetings, and some of the deliberation over cost was based on what was currently going on, not what is going on for the next school year. And when you look at what's going on for the next school year for those high need students, the cost was significantly less.
I'm still having a hard time understanding. Why is the cost significantly less?
Because the projection that was given to Lincoln was based on the current year, this year, and those students are transitioning from the current placement to a new placement that is their least restrictive environment that was actually substantially less money.
Understood. Okay, I understand. I missed the part about the transition. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
The second thing is go ahead.
No, I said thank you.
Then the second thing I noticed is that about 50% of your budget is for tuitioning students in grades 7 through 12. And I'm interested in understanding what assumptions you're using to construct this estimate. For example, are you going to pay average state tuition? Are you going to ask your voters for a higher amount? And have you taken into account sort of ghost students? And I didn't see anything in the budget about contingencies. If 5 students move into Lincoln over the summer, what does that do to your budget? Because you're going to roll that over till next year. Can you help me understand that?
So we have budgeted the actual tuition rate of MAUSD for most, 90% of the students, because that's where we believe they will go. We've used the higher tuition rate for other schools that people have expressed interest in, like CVU. And we do have a contingency for 2 additional students. So the budgeted number is based on actuals, and you may or may not know that MAUSD has got one of the highest tuition rates in the state. And so, and then, yes, we have a contingency for 2 extra students, and we also have, contingencies in other parts of the budget.
Okay. And then my last question is, there's an asterisk in your report, and then there's the org chart in the appendix. And can you just clarify what positions remain open? Sure. And if they're open, have they been posted? If they're posted, what applicants do you have? Because I think I understood from the 2 documents that most of the positions that still need to be filled are fractional positions in the unified arts, a librarian, a counselor, and I'm a little concerned about the ability to fill fractional positions. So can you help me understand that?
Let me just pull up my org chart right now.
Because I didn't see any, if I understood the text of the report, it said anything that had an asterisk behind it were positions where you were carrying staff over and weren't going to be searching for people. Did I understand correctly? Yes. So most of those positions were
not asterisks.
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on, just let me.
Your PE teacher is fractional. Like these are the kinds of positions that you would have been receiving services likely from MAUSD or have an itinerant teacher or some arrangement that you're now taking on.
So we are planning to offer those individuals, and we have talked to them, letters of intent to continue with. They've all indicated they want to stay.
Right.
We have talked to MAUSD about them continuing to be employed by MAUSD and Lincoln just contributing the percentage that they would still be in Lincoln toward their salary. MAUSD has said, oh no, you don't need to do that anymore. You can just give them a 0.2 contract or a 0.4 contract or whatever. So even though it feels a little more onerous, we do, those individuals have expressed a desire to stay, and we will be offering them a letter of intent to hire them for that amount of time.
And so let me be clear, who are they? The PE teacher, the art teacher, the music teacher are all fractional, and you have written commitments from them that they're going to stay?
No, that they want to stay, but we have to offer them, and we don't know what MAUSD is going to do, if they're going to.
When are you going to make those offers?
We are doing letters of intent by the end of the month.
But then you said you weren't sure about MAUSD. Can you help me out there?
I don't. We've talked to MAUSD about this. They are not able to be forthcoming with a lot of information right now. The conversations have been, yes, this will work out, but I don't have a confirmation. So there's, a lot of this is based on discussions that have happened where things have been confirmed that, yes, this will work out. We'll employ them for this, and you can give them a contract for that. But we have not reached the final conclusion of making offers on those staff.
And so do you have a backup plan?
Yeah, we'll hire somebody else.
For fractional positions?
Well,
so you'll be posting those positions in March and then try to hire fractional positions?
Go ahead, Matt.
Is that your contingency plan?
I'm going to jump in. I think there has been, the staff has come forward, even the part-time staff have come forward and said that they want to do whatever it is that they need to do to stay in Lincoln. And that includes taking a separate contract for the portion of the budgeted amount for Lincoln. We are also working to negotiate a new contract because it was an MAUSD contract, and letters of intent will go absolutely no later than March 15th. We were anticipating the end of the month. Patrick does have a little bit of a problem with that, and we are trying to communicate effectively with Patrick, and there have been some challenges. They have not been the challenges of Lincoln, I want to say. Lincoln has been very forthright and upfront about what their needs are, and the fact that there has always been shared staff in those little mountain towns, and that there may still need to continue to be shared staff, and how will that look? We are prepared to offer individual contracts to the individuals who have expressed a desire to stay.
Jen, can I ask a follow-up question? If I was a 0.4 employee at MAUSD and a 0.6 employee at MAUSD and a 0.4 employee at Lincoln, doesn't that impact my benefit status?
No, according to Patrick, the laws have changed so that you can still get the full benefit package if you have a contract that's equal to, a 0.5 or a 0.6 or whatever. And again, that's.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Not across SDSUs. Kim, chime in here. I see your hand.
I was just going to say, and I know that the health benefits now are covered in a pro rata way if you're not full-time. They are eligible, and there's a number of hours that are considered full-time, and I can't recall the exact specifics, but that is information readily available, and being part-time does impact what the employer pays.
Yes.
Well, we would prefer to pay to have MASD maintain the contract and LSD, contribute to the cost of the proportion that we, but we have not been able to negotiate that with MAUSD yet.
I would imagine that.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't want to speak. I guess maybe that's difficult to negotiate because it is having two separate employers, and there's statewide health benefits now that would have impact on that. So I don't actually know, but those are questions that would be raised as I'm thinking about it, and you may want to inquire further on, because the statewide health benefits are pretty prescribed. It's a statewide contract.
And then my last two questions, have you warned your meeting for April for your budget?
No, not yet. Because
How certain are you that you're going to be ready to go with a budget for approval in April?
99.9%. I mean, one of the key things that had to be finished was the exit agreement. Another is, again, we had to, sorry, excuse me one second.
Okay, then I'm gonna take care of him.
Excuse me, sorry, I'm at the hospital right now. We had to, we were starting with, a bunch of new information that we needed to gather to be a supervisory district. And so we really felt like it's in our best interest to take as much time as possible to get it right. And we're very close, and we came close to warning it for town meeting, but decided again, the exit agreement wasn't finished. And we are waiting for some key pieces of information from MAUSD, which hopefully will come in the next week or so. And, then we will warn the meeting and the budget. So we have it on our calendar is, I think March 11th is the day we need to, March 14th is the day we need to have everything warned.
Okay, yeah, it just might be hard to get your budget settled with all these moving pieces, including staff, right? Like if it could be that you have to change some things around if those agreements aren't, or for example, you have the agreement you want to have with MAUSD doesn't come through. Then my last question is do you have a date sort of penciled in somewhere that says, okay, if we can't have all this stuff in place and set to go by such and such a date, we're going to notify parents that they're going to need to tuition out their kids next year, because that is your contingency plan?
No, we don't, because we don't foresee that happening. But if we get to a place by, I guess, June 1st, then we would start to enact something like that. But again, the likelihood of that happening, short of a catastrophic event, we feel is very.
June 1st, I'll just say June 1st feels kind of late.
Okay.
If I was a parent, I would probably want to know before June 1st, but.
I mean, and that's good advice. And I think,
right?
We obviously have to talk about it.
Right, because I mean, that's just 30 days to pivot an entire school district, basically, right? And that feels like just not enough time. I would think that, I think where I'm doing the timeline in my mental head here is, you go for a budget mid-April. Let's say you don't approve your budget. They don't approve your budget. I mean, you have a 14-cent tax increase, $22,000 per student. I think there's a non-zero probability that could not get approved. Well, then what, right? It's then May 1st, it's 2 weeks later. June 1st is 6 weeks later, and you're going live with an entirely new school district on July 1st. Not a lot of time. And so I know there's a lot of moving pieces, and I know you're working really hard. I can see all the stuff you're doing on your website and all that, but we're kind of we're getting into crunch time here. And so I'm a little concerned that there just isn't enough time to dot all the I's and cross the T's here.
Well, there are a lot of working groups, and these people are working incredibly hard. And it isn't just hard work, it's with great efficacy, and it's a community of people working. And given the money that they have raised and the volunteers that have come forward, we have a technology expert who is out of Boston University, who lives in Lincoln, who volunteered and has put so many pieces together at no expense. So there may be some dangling pieces, but they're not dangling because they've been undone or untouched. They're dangling because—
No, and I didn't want to imply that, but I also noted in your conversation, Jen, that a lot of this is not in your control. You're waiting on a bunch of stuff from other people, right? MAUSD in particular.
We have to, we use our best estimate, which is what a budget is anyway. And, we've had you know, what we have been working on is estimates, and as every time we get more information, we're able to shore it up a little more and more. But a budget is your, you know, your estimate, and if things play out differently, you adjust accordingly. And we do have contingencies in there. We did negotiate $75,000 in reserves from MAUSD. There are various ways to fill positions if we don't, we aren't able to negotiate the kind of contract that, you know, we're hoping to with MAUSD. So it may not, I mean, we're still confident, and there's, you know, it's really in the best interest of MAUSD and LSD to make this work. All of our high school students will be going there. And if these, you know, issues don't get resolved now, we will adjust the budget along the way. I mean, that's kind of the position every school is in when you do a budget 6 months before execution.
Yeah, but some of this isn't just budget. Some of this is things that are required to operate a school district under state regulation. This is more than just the money, right? Like some of these things actually just have to be done and in place. So, you know, I'm hopeful for you, and I know I'm hopeful for you, and I can see all the good work that's being done, right? And I'm very encouraged by that. But I guess I'm just saying I don't know from what you've said and what I've read that this is as doable as I'm hearing you say. I hope it is, but I'm not knowing that it is. So I see other people have questions.
All right, Kim and then Lyle, and I've got a couple questions as well.
Hi there. I just want to maybe put out sort of emphasis on this question of sort of licensed and highly qualified educators for filling these positions. So I think I just have a little pause when you say there are other ways to skin the cat on some of these if these things don't come through. So I say that I just wanted to say that out loud. And then I am hearing a little fragility in a system that is reliant on volunteers with expertise to move the body of work, and not to discredit the value that adds. But I think that it would probably not be in keeping with things like what may eventually be district quality standards or quality assurance standards. I think that the notion that the special ed expenses have declined because some students are transitioning is a known area of fragility in a small system, that any student moving in can dramatically impact those expenses. And I'm sure you're well aware of that. But while that is benefiting the system in a positive way in the transition of some of these students who are moving on, I think there's equally as likely a challenge that you may have students moving in with extraordinary needs, and that would dramatically impact the small system and the sort of fragility and financial viability of the system. I echo Tammy's concern regarding budgets passing. I know I'm suspecting you have a very engaged community, and it may not be problematic, but it isn't insignificant to have such a dramatic increase. And then finally, I know that probably in the interim, there's expected to be a continuous improvement plan presented to the community year over year. So I think that would be on the horizon for you all, and that will be, I think, in effect until there are different standards under district quality or quality assurance measures. And so those are some of the compliance matters as I think about it for education quality standards, what's required, even currently, without there being any changes to those rules, which we are also working on currently. So I don't know if those are things you've considered or if they're new information for you.
I mean, obviously the issue around the special education has, you know, been raised from the very beginning about the risk to a very small district. And we have built contingencies in, and we have a reserve fund, and our risk is that this could happen to any district. And, you know, part of the part of the challenge, I think, as we go through this and work with you all is what's the worst case scenario versus maybe what's a more likely scenario, and how do we make contingencies for a worst case scenario, but we can't put everything in place to cover a worst case scenario. We'd have to, run a deficit, borrow money, do whatever we had to do to meet those needs.
I think that I would agree. And I think that is a challenge, and that is why statewide there's been a move to have a districts large enough to be able to absorb that sort of variability. So that is only one aspect of what I mentioned, things like relying on the expertise of volunteers and thinking about all the positions that will need to be in place, as Tammy mentioned, to comply with regulation, and thinking about the requirements for reporting out on a continuous improvement plan to the community by a school district. There are several other things that aren't really fragile based on a student or a family moving in or out that I recognize as a risk for everyone, all the more of a risk for the smallest of our schools and school districts. I think the others are just sort of real challenges to be facing in February for a district to go live in July 1. So I hope they're things that have been considered and, are able to come into place for you all, because I think they are not just check boxes. I think central office as administration are necessary for there to be and licensed educators in the classrooms are necessary to be educating students.
Yes, and I think, I've been hearing for, since the Ripton time that, if you're volunteering, that's not maybe, a reliable source of work or of standards. And, we have offered to pay people and they said, no, this is my contribution and I will commit this many hours to do this much. And so, and I've even said, well, the State Board of Education would feel better if we were paying you and you weren't a volunteer. And they're like, I'm not taking your money. So I just kind of want to push back on that assumption that just because people are volunteering means they're not as credible or as viable as someone that we're paying.
I definitely wasn't suggesting they weren't as credible, if you will. I think that there are some positions for which you need to have both budgeted and need to be qualified positions to meet the requirements of a school as a supervisory district. So
yes.
Those aren't positions on which you can rely on the goodwill of volunteers. And I think even in sort of, I can't recall which position you had said you have a generous qualified, maybe it was technology, I don't really remember, volunteering services. Those are services that are going to be necessary in the long run, or your servers don't have integrity. And so I just am not exactly sure how that gets managed through a volunteer.
We fully understand that. We're talking now about development, right? About making sure that all of the integral pieces are in place for both infrastructure and organization and financial. And we are putting all of those pieces together so that the school is on launch day 1, July 1. So at no point in any of the discussions that this board has ever had has there been a discussion about using volunteers as a way to either educate children or to keep those pieces in place, whether it's technology or library or whatever it is. They are in those individuals, whether we're going to contract with them or not, are in the budget. Yeah.
I
So
think
this,
sorry, go ahead, Madeline.
No, I mean, I just wanted to clarify that we're talking about, you know, we're building something, and in that building, people with great expertise have stepped forward. So we also have put in the budget for appropriate personnel who will be contracted.
Lyle?
Well, I want to thank you for the work you're putting into this, and it looks like you've really taken seriously the outline that we sent to you, asking to please answer each of these categories. What I think I'm hearing, and I hope you're hearing, is that we want you to be successful with this, and that's why we're asking these questions. And so two things I wonder, maybe this is back to our board members here. It sounds like we might be comfortable receiving the project management timeline that Madeline was talking about, just to show us, you know, these are the things you need to get done. These are your timelines when you're going to do them. Not trying to give you a whole lot more homework, but it sounds like you have that in some form, and you could pass that on to us. And then I wonder if the board is interested in having the two of them come back and talk to us at some point. And I don't know if April is too late to come to our April board meeting, just to say, first give us the timeline within the next couple of weeks. And then if you could meet with us again, if Jennifer, you think that's a good idea, just to bring us up to speed. And I'm thinking April, because then there's still a couple months, just so we know that you're being successful.
We're happy to do that, right, Jen?
Sure. I mean, I think that, again, we can't, I don't think there's any way to overcome the concern about a single special ed student moving in and how that might be managed, because that would unfold as it unfolded, and that is a risk that we have taken on and accepted. And that you know, I am curious about the sort of the idea of their, I completely understand your concerns, and I think it's very, you know, easy to say, well, they don't have this and they don't have this and they don't have this. And I did not try to explain every little thing that's going on in the background behind that, and who we're talking to about certain positions, and you know, where that our confidence just doesn't come from sort of naivete. But I do understand your concerns, particularly as the timeline gets shorter. And so, I mean, we'd be happy to come back anytime and tell you where we are. I think my question is there a decision that is going to be made somewhere in this process about, no, sorry, you're not ready?
So we don't have that statutory authority. You guys are, you know, locked and loaded for July 1st.
Right.
Good.
Okay. That's what I understand.
But Lyle, we are happy to answer any questions, and we do have working groups. We've had them from since November, actually, and those working groups have outlines. We have a master schedule of who's doing what, when, and what's been completed. If there's personnel attached to that, we're assuring that personnel, either as an FTE, whatever portion of an FTE, or if it's somebody that we have to hire out, and we're making sure that, for example, facilities manager, which that little school doesn't need, but certainly we need facilities support, and we may contract that out. We are also negotiating a contract and are sticking very strictly to assuring that we're transferring benefits and that people get there whatever step they accrued from MAUSD. We've been very fair and forthcoming about all of those things. So there's a lot of work that's already happened that's in the master schedule of things. And you'll be able to see the complete list, and then what's happened, what's been completed, and what's yet to be completed, and the timeline for that, which I think is what you're looking for.
Yes, I think it is. And our Jennifer, sorry if I'm mixing up Jennifer's here, our Jennifer, would we want them to come back at some point?
Yeah, I mean, I think April sounds like a good time, couple months out, and I think
Could we,
what?
I'm just trying to remember when our board meeting is in April versus when they have their meeting on their budget.
Third Wednesday in April.
Is that before or after? I don't have your date. I'm sorry,
It would
General.
be April 19th.
When is their vote on their budget?
The 11th.
Okay, so that would work then.
Yes, that works. That works beautifully.
Great. So I have you tentatively penciled in for April. So I had a few questions, and I'm curious because, you know, it looks like you are in progress with a number of your contracts, but even like the ones that are asterisks don't seem to me like they're actually set up yet. Is that correct? I mean, they're still pending successful contract negotiations, but do you actually have any positions that you can cross off the list as being filled?
There are no open positions at the school.
Well, no, the school, what she's saying is that all of the teacher contracts and the
yeah.
administrative contracts, we don't have a signed contract with them yet.
Yes.
Okay.
So, so no, but again, the negotiations are basically planned for 3 days. It's all based on the Mount Abe school district contract, and they have all indicated they want to stay. So that's the time frame, and we'll be offering letters of intent, you know, end of February, beginning of March, and they'll have to decide.
Okay. I'm also wondering, with your two unanticipated students that you've built into the budget, how does that compare with historic growth patterns? Like, have you gone back several years to just, I mean, do you know if two students is, if that tracks historic data, or did you just pick that number?
Well, as you know, the district hasn't been growing. And right now it is growing in the elementary school, but not at the high school level. So, you know, we looked at projected data, projected high school data over, you know, the last couple of years, and there really hasn't been change. So we put in 2.
But you said the elementary has been growing?
No, the elementary, but like we have, you know, we have no room, you know, we've been looking at tuitioning in students, and there's no room in the first or the second grade. There's very little room in and the number of kids coming through the preschool and into the kindergarten is growing.
Okay, so back to my original question. I mean, because I know small districts, and I know, you know, the cost of educating a student, and how that can really, you know, quickly throw your budget off. Not so much in year 1, but it will come back to bite you in year 2. And I'm just curious if the 2 students tracks what you're seeing historically for growth over the past several years.
Yeah, the answer is yes.
Yes.
At the high school. At the high school.
Really growth. We haven't seen growth at the high school.
Yeah.
We've seen a drop in the high school.
So you've seen a drop, but I guess I'm really trying to understand with the elementary school.
So the elementary school has, over the last couple of years, the numbers, kindergarten numbers, first grade, second grade numbers have risen. And they're
by more than 2?
Excuse me?
By more than 2 students?
Well, the number is about the 2 that is in the budget is relative to high school students, and they're really far out, 7th graders, 7th to 12th, and we're 4 years out from that. So the big numbers at the early grades there won't be an impact on a budget for 3 or 4 more years.
Okay.
Does that make sense? What I'm saying? I answered
Right.
it in a backward way, I think, but. Yeah.
And I'm curious, with your the $22,000, you know, roughly per education spending per equalized pupil, I know that number is based in part on a property yield this year of $15,479. I've never seen the property yield that high. I think last year it was 13,000 something, and for several years prior to that, it was only, you know, 10,000. And so, as the property yield, if it goes down, your tax rate's going to go up. So that's one thing I don't know if you've really factored in when you think about future years. You're looking at a 14-cent increase this year, but that was with the property yield that is at a historic high. And if that, and also based on a surplus in the ed fund that has to be spent this year. So that money is not going to be available in future years, which is, you know, probably going to make the property yield go down, which would make your tax rate go up. And then I'm also wondering if you know what's going to happen once the new pupil weights are implemented. I don't know how that's going to affect Lincoln.
Yeah, I'm going to answer the second one because we've just started to have that conversation on the pupil weights. But Jen does have a pretty detailed explanation, and we had a board member who just left the board. We have a new board member since then, and she worked tirelessly on this issue with Brad James and gave lots of input to the board. Jen?
You mean on the tax rate?
Yes.
Well, I mean, again, I think you're right that the yield will go down, but what really got us was the common level of appraisal, because there hasn't been appraisal done in 4, 5, 6 years in Lincoln, and it's being conducted now. So
you guys are actually being reappraised? Because I know like there's a shortage. I know there's a shortage of appraisers statewide, and that many towns aren't going to be able to get reappraised this year, but Lincoln is?
Ours has started.
Great. Okay.
Yeah. So the CLA should move in the opposite direction and be helpful for that.
And then with regard to the pupil weights, do you know how that's going to affect Lincoln?
No, we really haven't. We really only touched on that discussion. We have not, but we will put it on the list.
Okay.
Yeah.
And final question, do you know how many private pay students are in your town?
Right now there's 4. Well, 4 or 5, and then there's some homeschool students. And it doesn't look like the private pay schools will be eligible maybe for tuition. It depends on how that review comes out. But we've done a survey, and you know, we've gotten about a 50% response rate, but 95% of those have been continue with Mount Abe. And others have said, yeah, we might consider other schools. And only a few have said, yes, my child already goes to this, that, to this place or that place.
Okay, because that may also change your numbers, of course. So I think, you know, just kind of looking forward, I think it would be really helpful for you to drill down on that. But I also really think it would be important for you guys to understand what's going to happen with the pupil weights, because that could have a really significant effect. You know, this year's tax rate compared to next year's tax rate. So I think that would be good information for your voters to have.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Just as an aside, and I think I brought this up long ago, but there are not a lot of properties for sale in Ripton right now. So it doesn't look like there would be a lot of movement of people coming in. So for whatever that's worth, as far as new pupils moving to town.
Do you mean Lincoln, not Ripton?
Yeah, Lincoln, whatever town we're talking about now.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You know, Lyle, I think you bring up a good point. It's really interesting, and I was surprised to find this out. There are currently 21 children accessing universal preschool in Lincoln. And when you look at the number of students K through 6, that's a pretty large number. And for the following year, there's also a high number. So when the 4-year-olds move, and then the new group of 3-year-olds, we're projecting 22 children for the following year.
You know, for what it's worth, I think the properties that were for sale during COVID got bought up by many younger families with kids. I know many. I know my new next door neighbors and my new neighbors up the road, and a portion of them were families who one of the parents had gone to the Lincoln Community School and they moved back because they wanted their child to go there. So you're absolutely right. there isn't anything available, but the people who have moved in the last 2 years have certainly bumped up our pre-K numbers from, 16 2 years ago to 22 this year.
Other questions or comments? Oh, Kim.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding, but that's 3 and kids who are 3 and 4, right? So it's maybe 10 to a grade. Is that the indicator of preschool? Or is that the indicator of the size of the incoming K?
No, it is not. Thank you for the clarification. No, it is not. That's a combination of 3 and 4-year-olds. So my understanding is that 10 of those children will be kindergarten eligible next year for the new school year. But that we would still continue to have approximately 22 pre-K kids. The number is surprisingly high.
10 in a grade doesn't sound terribly high, but I that is just an interesting perspective. The other question I have is related to, you said that you're offering letters of intent. And do you know the date by which employees of MAUSD must decide whether they're renewing their contract?
I think we just got that from Patrick today, didn't we, Jen?
I do. Hold on.
And Kim, I wasn't suggesting that 10 is a large kindergarten. 10 is the number of children accessing universal preschool. There are more than 10 children coming into the kindergarten. Not everybody accesses the universal preschool.
Thank you.
Okay.
And now that I've typed in the right town, there are no properties for sale.
No, that's right.
In Lincoln. There we go.
There are not.
Believe me, I've been looking. I'm trying to downsize. 3 to 4 weeks.
Was that in the one that he gave us today, Jen? Because I have that.
He says that if we told him we had planned to issue, well, he said issuing contracts. We'll be issuing letters of intent by the end of February, early March, which is about 3 to 4 weeks ahead of when MAUSD issues contracts. So I'm guessing they're April 15.
Obviously, that's just important because as they would transition, you may put them on a seniority scale in your new contract, but if they choose to stay and we're interested in going back, I don't believe they would retain their seniority. If you were to need to, if your budget doesn't pass and you needed to reduce staff, they would have only the protection.
I don't know when they would have to resign by.
Yeah.
No, but I understand the point that you're making is significant, right? So you're saying if they accept a position, because they don't know, or the budget doesn't pass, or there are circumstances under which somebody would then want to go back to MAUSD and they would lose their seniority.
That's right.
Yes, I heard that. That's a significant point that you're making. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. And I think the timing with the later budget vote and those decisions are tricky. So I offer that as a reminder of something to be pretty thoughtful about as you're looking at your staffing, since that is, and systemically, not even just in Vermont, is problematic right now.
Yeah, thank you.
Any final thoughts, questions? All right, well, I think this has been, yeah.
I'm so sorry, Jen. I guess I know that as we would build budgets in districts I've been involved with, we would not necessarily be broadcasting, but we would be thinking about what areas would need to be compromised if we weren't to be able to pass the budget. And I don't know, in a narrower budget and smaller range of services and grades and student count, what version of consideration you have done that would keep you in compliance with ed quality standards. It just seems like a skeleton staffing, and I know that we all know that budgets are in the order of 80% staffing. So what would have to go?
Well, we've talked about that, and you know, our principal is quite creative. Had to cut budgets before they, you know, they went into the district budget. So we do have ideas about that.
Okay.
That would not compromise the basic education quality.
Right. But again, a really good point, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, and I think we've talked to the town already about the tax increase, and there will be the people who will be extremely, no one's going to be happy. And I think that the fact that it's actually not that we're more expensive, not being part
Code
of.
Gray,
Sorry.
6th floor, East Pod. Code Gray, 6th floor, East Pod.
She's with her mom in the hospital.
East Pod.
Code Gray, whatever that means. So now I lost my thought. What were we talking about, staffing?
I think you were mentioning that you had spoken with the community about the tax increase, and some
Yes,
people
we have. So that news has been broken already, and there will, you know, I think for the community, the fact that it's far less related to being more expensive, being separate from Mount Abe, and more related to the common level of appraisal that has created the big jump, makes it less, not necessarily easier to, that would have happened regardless of whether we were in Mount Abe or not, you know, that impact would have been the same. And so the desire to support the school pretty much trumps everything right now. And if they don't pass it, we do have ways to go back and reduce it. And that, you know, that's what we would do.
You know, we had a really, a very nice turnout for the informational meeting where all of this was discussed. And that was probably already a good 6 or 8 weeks ago, wasn't it, Jen? Mm-hmm. It wasn't January sometime, maybe. Yeah, it was about 6 weeks ago. And there was a fairly significant turnout, and people were communicative, and people were given emails of board members and were told that they could reach out to anybody. There wasn't the website wasn't up and running yet. And there were no, at the time, and since then, there haven't been any concerns that have been raised by any community members. That doesn't mean that there isn't somebody who's got some concerns and didn't come forward. I'm just saying that I think the board really did it was a great presentation, and we're very transparent and about both challenges and strengths. And there were no concerns that were raised since then, at the time or since then. So I think that was a very good thing.
I mean, we've been doing community updates on a regular basis, so people know where we are along the process and the private money we're raising and how it's being spent. And so it won't be a surprise. What doesn't mean they'll vote for it, but it won't be a surprise.
Right. Well, let's leave it there. Thank you both for coming in and answering these questions. And it does just kind of point to the benefit of having, you know, different people with different backgrounds and perspectives, you know, really makes this a very rich and thoughtful conversation. So I think, you know, all of the questions from board members and the insights have been, you know, really helpful, I hope. And again, you know, given when the spirit of, you know, just trying to make this a good product for you guys and helping you sort of think through and anticipate. So, you know, we definitely appreciate the hard work that you're doing, the hard work that you're continuing to do. And certainly we will touch base with you in April, but certainly before if you have any other questions or thoughts.
Okay, and then Jen will get something out to you, Lyle, about the projects and the list
I'll
of
send you the timeline in the
okay,
next week.
with the timeline of things that have been completed and things yet to be completed. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, so I think the item that is left on the agenda is item L, which is future meeting planning. The one thing, and this is out of order, I don't believe that I mentioned during board announcements that I'm appointing Richard to the Roles and Responsibilities Subcommittee. If I said that earlier, I'll just say it again. I meant to mention that earlier, and I don't anticipate that the Roles and Responsibilities Subcommittee is going to reconvene until after EQS gets out the door. But I did want to go ahead and have that subcommittee in place in case, something comes our way from the legislature. So I just wanted to put that out there. And thank you, Richard, for agreeing to join. I didn't hear back from anyone else about, wanting to be on a committee or off a committee. So I think everything else is just staying the way it is. Unless, I can change it at any time. So if you're not happy, let me know. Tammy?
I'm just looking at the agenda. I also am noting item Q, update on tuition hearing. Is that also something we need to attend to as well?
I believe that you might have an old version of the
Oh,
agenda.
do I have the wrong one up? Thank you.
Yes, that was taken off. But that leads me into future meeting planning, because one of the things for next month will be an update on the tuition hearing. So to that point, I also have on my calendar for March a presentation on the collaboration between Vermont State Colleges and the Vermont Career and Technical Education Centers to offer programming at Vermont Tech College. Richard has also offered to host a DEI presentation. It's Scotty Tabachik. And Richard, I'm sorry, correct me if I've said that wrong. Principal at Newbrook Elementary, and Wayne Kreminski, principal at Marlborough School, to talk about the Wyndham Central JEDI program. And then the other thing that I have on my calendar is I do believe that we will be electing officers. I know it feels like we just did it, but if I've done my math right, it should be March of 2023, and this will be, for the 2-year term. So I think that will also be coming up, and I don't know if there is anything else that I've forgotten that we can go ahead and pencil in now. Kim.
An update on how to approach the recertification of independents approved to receive public dollars. So I think that timing couldn't be more urgent, I think, for probably families and independent schools and public schools.
Okay, great. Anything else? All right. Well, I do believe that takes us to our final item, which is item Q, public to be heard. So I don't know if there are any members of the public who wish to speak. If so, please raise your hand by hitting *5. And I'm not seeing anybody. I don't know if anyone else is. All right. Well, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. I'll move.
So move.
Okay. Moved by Lyle, seconded by Jenna. Let me just say this has been, there was a lot of work that we got done today, and I really appreciate everyone hanging in. And, I'm very grateful to have you guys on the board. So with that, all those in favor of adjourning, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Aye.
Any abstentions? All right, we stand in adjournment. Thank you.